Okay, let's begin. The girl who would be king. Once upon a time, there was a strong and mighty king. He had won battles against his neighboring kings and had made them obey him. In this way, he had expanded the boundaries of his kingdom. As part of the peace agreement, the defeated kings were ordered to send him one of their sons to serve him for 10 years. For a long time, one king had successfully defended his country against the all powerful king, but as he had reached old age, he too had been forced to enter into an agreement with the all powerful king, as he could no longer lead his army to victory. The trouble was, he could not send one of his sons to serve the all powerful king because he only had 3 daughters. What was going to happen if he did not comply? Was the all-powerful king to take his kingdom away? He worried that if he incurred the all-powerful king's wrath and lost his kingdom, he and his daughters would have to live out the rest of their days in poverty and shame. The 3 daughters, seeing their father increasingly plagued by worry, started wondering what was causing it. They did not know what to do to cheer him up. When they saw that nothing was to his liking, the eldest daughter brought up the courage to ask him one day at dinner time what was worrying him. "Does our behavior displease you?" she asked. "Are the servants badly behaved? Tell us, Dad, what is disturbing your peace and poisoning your old age? We promise to do whatever is needed to relieve your sadness. You, my dears, cannot quell the pain that is seeping into my soul. Only a son could take me out of the sea of problems I am finding myself in." "I don't understand," the eldest daughter said. "Why are you hiding from us the source of your worries?" "My dears," the king said, "as long as you have been on this earth, you have busied yourself with the needle and the weaving loom. You know how to spin, to sew, to weave. Only a hero could save me, someone who knows how to handle a mace, to carry a sword with courage, and to ride like a dragon. Tell us anyway, father, we want to know what is worrying you." As the girls persisted with their pleas, the king said, "Here is the reason, my daughters, for my sadness. You know that no one has been able to touch my kingdom for as long as I was young, without getting their due reward and returning to wherever they had come from in shame. Now, though, old age has drained me of my powers. My arms are weak. They can no longer handle the sword or make the enemy tremble. My horse, who has helped me win every battle in my younger days, is also old. He is so full of disease, barely drags himself around, living from day to day. In previous times I was able to strike fear into my enemies, but nowadays what can I say? You know that I have agreed to obey the powerful king, but with him the custom is that all those under his power send him a son to serve him for 10 years, and I only have you." "I will go, father," said the eldest daughter, "and I will do my best to please you. I fear you will return not having accomplished anything. Who knows in what trouble you will get yourself there, and no one will be able to untangle. All I know, father, and what I can promise, is that I will not embarrass you. If this is how it is, get ready and go." As soon as the girl obtained her father's permission, she was beside herself with joy and started getting ready. She was on her feet all day long, giving orders and packing all the things she needed for the journey. She chose for the most majestic horse from the royal stables, the most beautiful and expensive clothes, and packed enough food for an entire year. When her father saw that she was ready to leave, he advised her on how she could act so no one realized she was a girl. He taught her everything a hero who is about to take on a high-ranking job would need to know. He also taught her how to avoid gossip, how to fit in with the sons of the other kings. Then he said to her, "May God take you in his care. Remember what I have taught you." The girl set off as quickly as lightning. The entire earth could not contain her happiness. If she hadn't at some point stopped to wait for her servants and her food supplies, these would have gotten lost because they could not keep up with her. Meanwhile, the king set off on a side path. It led towards the edges of his kingdom and stopped by a road she would have to pass through. There he put up a bridge made of copper and transformed himself into a wolf and hid underneath the bridge. When the girl was about to pass, the wolf suddenly jumped out at her, baring his teeth. He looked so frightening he would have put the fear of death into anyone. His eyes shone like flames as he looked straight into hers, and he seemed ready to engorge her. The girl froze with fear and lost her nerve. If the horse had not jumped to the side, the wolf would have struck his claws into her. She galloped back to her father's kingdom at great speed. Her father, who used the side path to return before she did, came out to welcome her back. "Did I not tell you, my dear, that not all flies make honey?" he said. "That is true, father, but I did not know that going to serve a king meant I would have to fight such a wild and rabid beast." "If this is how it is," said the king, "stay at home and take care of your spindle and your spools. May God have mercy on me, and not let me die in shame." Not long passed, and the second daughter also asked to go. She promised that she would do everything in her power to carry out the task she had set herself right through to the end. After much pleading and many promises, her father relented and allowed her to go. But the same thing happened to her as had happened to her elder sister, welcoming her back. Her father said, "Well, my daughter, did I not tell you that not all flies make honey?" "That is true, father, that's what you said. But that wolf was just too scary. He opened his maw to devour me, and looked at me with eyes that seemed to pierce through my soul." "So stay home," the king said. "Take care of the broomsticks and the vegetables in the kitchen." Time passed. Then one day, as they were having dinner, the youngest daughter said to her father, "Father, let me try my luck as well. Given that your older sisters have not been able to carry out their plan, I wonder how you even think to put yourself forward." The king said, "You have barely figured out how to eat out of a bowl." He tried to curtail her wish to go in all sorts of ways, but in vain. "For the love of you, Dad," she said, "I will work like four devils to succeed, but if God bars my way, I will return to you without shame." Her father kept trying to dissuade her and was reluctant to let her go, but his daughter persuaded him with her pleas. Eventually the king said, "If you really want to go, I will give you permission. Let me see what you end up doing. How I will laugh if I see you return with your nose to the ground. You will laugh, Dad, as you have laughed at my sisters too, without the diminishing their honor." Having gained her father's permission, the youngest, the king's youngest daughter, went to the royal stables where the best stallions in the entire kingdom were kept to choose herself a horse. She examined one horse then another, but none of them caught her eye. After much searching, she found her father's old horse, the one he had ridden since his youth. The horse was lying on his side, full of disease and scabs. As she saw him, she was overcome by pity and could not bear to leave his side. The horse said, "I can see that because of the love you have for the king, you are looking at me like this. What a hero he was in his youth. The two of us have been through many adventures together, but since he has grown old, he has stopped taking me out for a ride. And I am skinny like this because there is nobody who can feed me like he can. If someone were to take care of me the way he did, in 10 days I would become as strong as 10 of the other royal horses." "How would you need to be taken care of?" the girl asked. "I would need to be washed every day with pure water, to be given barely boiled in sweet milk, and be fed a bushel of hot embers. If I could be sure you will help me reach my goal, I would be tempted to do as you say." "Mistress," the horse said, "I promise you will not regret it." The king's daughter took care of him just as he had taught her to do. On the 10th day he shook himself 3 times and became beautiful, as plump as a melon and as limber as a deer. Then looking happily at the king's daughter, he said, "May God give you luck and success, mistress. You have cared for me and allowed me to once again be the way I wanted to be in this world. Tell me what you want me to do." "I want to go to the big and mighty king, our neighbor, to serve him, and I need someone to advise me along the way." "If you will go with me," the horse told her, "I will serve you the way I've served your father, as long as you follow my advice. In that case, we will leave in 3 days." The king's daughter started making preparations for the journey. She took some clean clothes, but without frills, a few food items, and some spinning money. As her father came to say his goodbyes, she said, "May God be with you, Dad, and may I find you in good health." "Have a good trip, my daughter," her father said. "Just don't forget what I have taught you, and whenever you are in need, focus your mind on God, the source of all that is good and of help." As she promised to do so, the girl set off. As with his other 2 daughters, the king took a short cut and overtook her. He set up the copper bridge, transformed into a wolf, and waited for her while hiding underneath the bridge. On the way, the horse told the girl that her father was going to test her bravery. He advised her on what to do to pass the test. When they arrived at the bridge, the wolf jumped towards her. His eyes flashed, and his fangs were bared to put the fear of death into her. He looked ravenous, as if he hadn't eaten for a month. But when the beast... Hi. Hello, Jen AH. I'm glad that you're able to send a message. I was concerned about that, so I'm glad you can... Let me say hi. Hi. I'm so glad. I hope you're doing well. How are you? Where was I? Um, But when the beast was about to dig his claws in, the girl gave a horse a signal. She charged against the wolf, holding her sword, ready to tear him into pieces. If the wolf hadn't jumped to the side, she would have cut him in two. She decided that no matter what, she would fulfill the task she had taken upon herself. She passed over the bridge as triumphant as any male hero. Her father marveled at her courage. Then he took another short cut, overtook her again, set up a bridge made of silver, transformed himself into a lion, and waited for her underneath the bridge. The horse, however, had already warned the girl about what she was about to encounter. He had also taught her how to overcome this second test. As soon as the girl reached the silver bridge, the lion jumped at her, his maw wide open. He seemed ready to devour her and the horse, with fangs like ivory and claws like scythes, and roaring so loudly that the forest shook and the earth rumbled. Looking at his head as large as an ox, and his mane upright and dishevelled, anyone who would have been overcome with fear. But the king's daughter, encouraged by the horse, charged against him with her sword, ready to strike. If the lion had not run back to his hiding place underneath the bridge, he would have been quartered. Then she passed over the bridge, thanking God and getting herself ready for the next challenge. Having never left her home before, she was full of wonder, seeing the beauty of the fields. She would have liked to get off the horse to gather a bunch of the beautiful flowers that were covering the valleys and hills, flowers she had never seen before, or to stand in the shadow of a tall and bushy tree, in which thousands of birds were singing songs so sweet they could have sung anyone to sleep. And over on the other side she would have liked to go to the small river with water as clear as tears, which had sprung from the corner of some rock from the side of the hills. She was looking at the river and longing, enjoying its sounds and watching as the water meandered along the earth, surrounded by flowers and the greenery of spring. But the horse was pushing her to keep going. Young men do not take a look at these things until after they have completed their task, he kept telling her. He also warned her that her father had set yet another trap for her and taught her how to emerge victorious once more. The girl was listening to her horse's advice and following it to the letter. She had seen that it had led to good things, and she did not waver in her obedience. Her father, as before, took a short cut and overtook her. He set up a bridge made of gold, transformed himself into a 12-headed dragon, and hid himself underneath the bridge. When the girl was about to pass over the bridge, she was suddenly confronted by an enormous dragon with 12 heads, smashing his tail against the ground. Fire was gushing from his 12 mouths, and his 12 tongues looked like burning arrows. When the girl saw how frightening the dragon looked, her hair stood on edge. The horse, sensing she was about to lose her nerve, reminded her what he had taught her, and she found a small bit of courage within herself. She held on to his harness and spurred him on as she charged against the dragon with her sword. The battle lasted a whole hour. The horse was telling her when to go to the side to cut off one of the dragon's heads, but the enemy was guarding himself pretty well. In the end, the girl succeeded in wounding the dragon. At that point, with 3 somersaults, he turned human again. The girl could not believe her eyes when she saw her father before her, and he, taking her in his arms and kissing her forehead, said, I see that you are brave, my daughter. You have done well to pick this horse, because without him you would have returned home the same as your sisters. I hope that you will bring the task which you have taken upon yourself to a good end. Remember what I have taught you, and always follow your horse's advice. Then they parted ways, and going for a long time they reached some big mountains. Between the mountains they came across 2 Zmei, fearsome human-like creatures with magic powers, who had been fighting for 9 years. Neither of the Zmei had been able to prove himself the strongest, nor was either of them prepared to relent, as they were fighting to kill. When they saw the king's daughter, thinking she was a young man, one of the Zmei said, Prince Charming, help me slay this enemy of mine, and I will one day be of service to you. The other one said, Prince Charming, help me slay this enemy of mine, and I will give you Yellow Sun, my fearless horse. The girl asked the horse whom of the 2 Zmei she should help. The horse said to rescue the one who had promised to give her Yellow Sun, because he is younger brother and even more fearless. So the girl charged against the other Zmu with her sword and cut off his head with one strike. The surviving Zmu hugged his savior and thanked her. Then he invited her home so he could give her Yellow Sun as he had promised. The smooth's mother could not contain her happiness when she saw her son. She did not know how to thank Prince Charming for having saved her son's life. I would like to rest after my long journey, the king's daughter said, so they offered her a room and left her alone. The girl went to the stables to tend her horse and asked him if she should be wary of anything. The horse told her what to expect and how she should respond. Meanwhile, the smooth's mother suspected that there was something going on. She told her son that the young lad who had saved him from danger was in fact a girl, and that she would make a perfect wife for him. But her son did not believe her. He thought no female could have handled a sword as well as his rescuer had done. The smooth's mother decided to prove to her son that her suspicion was correct. That evening, she placed a bundle of flowers at each of their heads. At whose head the flowers were to wilt, that one was a man. If, on the other hand, the flowers were to remain green, the sleeper was a woman. Following the horse's advice, the king's daughter made sure to rise toward dawn when the sleep was sweetest. Walking gingerly on her tiptoes, she went into the smooth's room. She put her own bundle of flowers at his head, took his, and returned to her room, where she put it at her head before going back to sleep. In the morning, when the smooth's mother woke up, she immediately went to her son's room. There she found the flowers to be wilted as she had expected. After the king's daughter woke up, the smooth's mother went to her room as well, where she expected to find the flowers still green and fresh. But after seeing that these flowers had wilted as well, she still could not believe that her son's rescuer was a lad. She told her son that Prince Charming could not be male. The words were flowing out of his mouth like honey. His face was so sweet you wanted to soak it in. His hair was falling on his shoulders in waves, his hands and feet were as small and delicate as an elf's, and his face seemed to say, "Come hither," with big beautiful eyes so alive they made you dizzy. All of these things could only belong to a girl, even though she was hiding herself under a lad's clothes. To prove her suspicion, the smooth's mother decided to try one other thing, and taught her son what to do. After they said good morning to each other, the smooth invited his rescuer to accompany him into the garden. There, the smooth showed the king's daughter all the different kinds of flowers that were growing there, and invited her to sample their sweet scent. But the king's daughter remembered her horse's advice, recognized this as another test. "Why did you bring me into the garden like a woman to admire the flowers?" she said in an assertive voice. "We should go to the stables to see how the horses are being cared for." The smooth reported this to his mother, but she still could not believe that Prince Charming was male. She persuaded her son to lay one more trap. She told him to take his rescuer into the armory and invite him to choose a weapon to take away with him as a present. If he would choose one of the weapons decorated with precious stones, this would prove that Prince Charming was in fact a girl. After lunch, the smooth led the Prince Charming to the armory. There were carefully arranged all sorts of weapons. Some were decorated with precious stones, others were undecorated. The king's daughter, after examining all the weapons, chose for herself a rusty-looking sword with the metal twisted into a coil. Then she said to the smooth and his mother that she wanted to leave the next day. When the smooth's mother heard the kind of weapon Prince Charming had chosen, she was furious that she could not reveal the girl's disguise to her son. Even though Prince Charming seems to be male based on his habits, he is in fact a girl of the most cunning, she told her son. However, seeing that she had no choice, she and her son went to the stables and gave Yellow Sun over to the king's daughter. After they had all said their goodbyes, the king's daughter went on her way riding her horse, with Yellow Sun galloping alongside. Once they were back on the road, the horse said to the girl, "Mistress, up until now you have followed every piece of advice I have given you, and all has gone well for you. Follow my advice once more, and you will not regret it. I am old and getting increasingly scared of stumbling. Take my brother Yellow Sun and continue your journey with him. Trust him in the same way you have trusted me. He is much younger than I am and more agile, and will teach you the way I did, what to do, and when you need help." "Your advice has indeed been excellent," the girl said, "but if I didn't know how loyal you were to my father on this occasion, I would not follow it. I will, however, trust your brother the way I've trusted you, once he proves that he has my best interests at heart." "Trust me, mistress," said the Yellow Sun. "I will be proud to have a brave woman such as yourself ride on my back. I will do my best so you do not feel my brother's absence. I want to protect him, as he is old, of the difficulties and dangers of the journey you intend to undertake, because you should know that you will run into many difficulties and dangers, but with God's will, if you follow my advice, you will overcome them all and fulfill your mission." The king's daughter mounted Yellow Sun and parted from her old horse weeping. They rode and rode until the king's daughter saw a golden lock of hair lying by the side of the road. She stopped Yellow Sun and asked him if she should take it or if she should leave it there. "If you take it, you will regret it, but if you leave it, you will regret it as well. It is better if you take it," the horse said. The girl took it, put it close to her chest, and they carried on. They passed hills, mountains, and valleys, left forests rich and green in their wake, clearings with flowers the girls had never seen before, and streams with clear, cold water. Eventually they reached the court of the big and mighty king. The other king's sons who were serving at the mighty king's court came out to greet them. The young men could not take their eyes away from the new arrival. Um, Both her words and her face charmed them. The next day she went before the king and said why she had come. The king couldn't contain his happiness that such a handsome and charming lad had arrived to serve him. He was delighted with the lad's answers to his questions, as the young man was speaking with wisdom and humility. The king became fond of his new servant and took him under his wing. Time passed, and the king's daughter settled into her new life. She found the other king's sons stupid and impulsive and did not want to associate with them. They soon began hating her for keeping her distance and being favored by the king, and started plotting her downfall. One day the king's daughter cooked herself some food. She was about to start eating when two sons of the king's dropped by. She invited them to eat with her. The two king's sons enjoyed the food so much they licked their fingers when they finished eating. They praised her for her cooking skills and said they had never tasted anything as good. During the meal, the two king's sons also spotted the lock of hair the girl had found on the road. They immediately recognized it as belonging to Ileana Samtsiana, a young maiden of legendary beauty. As soon as the two king's sons met the other king's sons, they told them that they had eaten food cooked by the recent arrival, and it had tasted better than the food at the royal court. Then all the king's sons started pestering her to cook for the whole court. One day the opportunity arose to do so. The royal cooks had gotten so drunk they weren't even able to light a fire in their stoves. After being asked persistently, the king's daughter started cooking some excellent courses. When her food was brought to the king, he could not stop delighting in it. He called the head chef and told him to keep cooking like this from now on. The head chef, knowing he would be unable to comply with the king's request, and that it was better to own up to the truth, told the king who it was who had cooked that day. Then the king's sons told the king that was recently arrived king's son had in his possession a lock from Ileana Samtsiana's golden hair. As soon as the king heard this, he ordered the new arrival to be brought before him at once. "You have the lock of hair belonging to Ileana Samtsiana and haven't told me, even though I favored you over the others," the king said. After the girl showed him the lock of hair, he said, "I order you to bring me Ileana Samtsiana. If not, you will be put to death." The poor king's daughter tried to protest, but the king had made up his mind. She went to tell Yellow Sun what had happened and asked for his advice. "Do not fear, mistress," the horse said. "This very night my brother appeared to me in a dream to tell me that Ileana Samtsiana has been kidnapped by a Zmo. She told him that she won't love him until he presents her with her horde of mares, and the Zmo is at wit's end about how to fulfill her wish. In the meantime, he is keeping her in one of his castles among the sea marshes. Ask the king for a fleet of 20 ships. Take the most beautiful wares as cargo, and we will find Ileana Samtsiana." Upon hearing this, the king's daughter went straight to the king. "Greetings, wise king. I have come to tell you that to complete the mission you have entrusted me with, I will need 20 ships and money to buy the most beautiful and expensive wares to take as cargo." "Fine, but bring me Ileana Samtsiana," the king said. As soon as the ships were ready, they loaded them with expensive gifts. The king's daughter and Yellow Sun boarded the most beautiful of the ships, and they set sail. Neither the winds nor the waves nor the sea could stand against them. After several weeks, they reached the ocean marshes. There they cast anchor. Before going onto dry land, the king's daughter took from the ship a pair of slippers sewn with golden thread and decorated with precious stones. She attached them to the front of her belt, as Yellow Sun had advised her to do. As they wandered the shores, walking here and there, they spotted some palaces in the distance which were rotating after the sun, and headed in their direction. On the way, they were confronted by 3 servants of the Zmo, who had been tasked with guarding Ileana Samtsiana. But as soon as the servants laid their eyes on the slippers hanging from the king's daughter's belt, they relaxed their security measures. They were eager to find out as much as they could about how the young lad sitting before them on his horse had come into possession of such exquisite items. The young lad told them that he is a merchant, and that he had gotten lost while sailing the seas. He said he would be interested in speaking to their mistress to see if she would like to buy some of his wares. Upon their return, the servants told Ileana Samsiana that if they had seen what they had seen, and that the merchant was waiting outside the castle doors to speak to her. Indeed, as she looked through her window, she could see the merchant. As soon as she laid eyes on him, her heart started pounding, so she told her servants that she wanted to meet the merchant and see these slippers for herself. If you were to do me the honor of accompanying me to my ships, I could show you wares that are even more beautiful and expensive than these puny slippers, the merchant said as Ileana Samsiana was marveling at their beauty. Ileana Samsiana said she would indeed be keen to see these wares. She entered one of the ships and was overwhelmed by the riches it carried. While her eyes feasted upon the wares, the sailors pushed the ship away from dry land, and they were soon in the open sea. When she eventually came to her senses and found herself in the middle of the ocean, Ileana Samsiana pretended to be angry at having been misled. She started arguing with the merchant that he had betrayed her trust, but in her heart she was praying to God to help them escape the terrible Zmo that had been keeping her captive. They reached the shore safely. But the Zmo's mother, who had been informed by the servants that her soon-to-be daughter-in-law Ileana Samsiana had been kidnapped by a sea merchant, had started chasing after them. As soon as they set foot on shore, they saw her coming towards them like a lioness, with her maw open wide, casting enormous flames. As soon as Ileana Samsiana saw her, she realized who this terrible creature was. She told the merchant with whom she was riding on Yellow Sun, and started crying. "What should I do?" the merchant asked Yellow Sun. "I don't know how much longer we can bear the heat coming from these flames. Put your hand in my left ear, take out the wax that is there, and throw it behind you," Yellow Sun said. The merchant did this. A stone mountain erected itself behind them, so tall it could reach the sky. For a moment they thought they were safe, but the Zmo's mother managed to climb the mountain from crag to crag and kept on chasing them. Ileana Samsiana told the merchant that the Zmo's mother was closing in. After consulting with the horse, he pulled a hairbrush out of the horse's right ear and threw it behind them. As soon as he did so, a rich forest sprang up in their wake, so thick that no beast could pass through it. But the Zmo's mother gnawed at the trees, swung herself from branch to branch, jumped from top to top, slithered through any small gaps in the undergrowth that she could find, and managed to make her way out of the forest. Then she continued chasing after them as fast and furious as a tornado, when they saw that she had overcome this obstacle as well. The merchant once again asked the horse what to do. He said that Ileana Samsiana should take off her engagement ring and throw it behind her. As soon as she threw the ring, a wall erected itself behind them. They reached up to the sky. The Zmo's mother, once she saw that she could neither climb over the wall nor gnaw at it, couldn't contain her rage. Furious and filled with hatred, she climbed up and put her mouth next to the gap that the ring had left behind. Through that tiny hole she blew fire from her cursed mouth for 3 hours, hoping that the fire would reach them and burn them to death. But they took refuge at the bottom of the wall and were not harmed by the fire. The Zmo's mother blew and blew. When she saw that she could neither kill nor catch them, the bile in her burst from anger. She fell to the ground and died like a devil. They waited a while she had died for good, as Yellow Sun had taught them. At that moment the wall disappeared as if it had never existed, and the ring was back on Ileana Samsiana's finger. They continued their journey and kept going until they reached the royal court. Upon arriving, they went before the king, who received Ileana Samsiana with great honor. He could not contain his happiness and fell in love with her as soon as he saw her, but Ileana Samsiana was overcome with sadness. "How is it possible," she thought, "that I seem to fall into the hands of men I cannot bear to even look at?" Her heart belonged to Prince Charming, who had saved her from the Zmo. But the king said she had to marry him. "Wise king, may you long reign over your kingdom," she said, "but I cannot marry you until you bring me my horde of mares, along with the steed that guards them." The king called in the king's daughter and said, "Go and bring back Ileana Samsiana's horde of mares and the steed that guards them. If not, you will be put to death." "Powerful king," the king's daughter said, "I have only just returned from having accomplished the last difficult task you had entrusted me with, for which my life has been at stake. You may brave king's sons serving at your court, and because all find you a straightforward and God-fearing man, you would be within your right to give this task to someone else. I don't know anything about the horde of mares you are asking for. I don't care. Go find it wherever it may be and bring it here, and don't say another word." The king's daughter bowed and went to tell Yellow Sun what she had been ordered to do. "Go and find 9 buffalo skins," the horse told her. "Dull them out and cover me with them. Do not fear. With God's help you will bring to good end the latest task the king has laden you with, and know that he will be made to suffer for his deeds in the end." The king's daughter did as the horse had told her. They started on their journey. On their way, they came across the Zmo, who was hoping to marry Ileana Samsiana. He was wandering like crazy, trying to figure out how to catch the horde of mares. The king's daughter told him that Ileana Samsiana had been kidnapped by a sea merchant and that his mother was died tried to rescuing his beloved from the kidnapper. Upon hearing this, the Zmo was furious. His eyes became blurry with anger and he could no longer see. Then, when he realized that he was in fact speaking with the kidnapper of his beloved, he lost his temper from anger and grief, and roaring like a lion, he battled with the king's daughter, who was keeping her cool and whom the horse was encouraging and helping. When Yellow Sun could see that the Zmo was preparing to strike, he would rise higher than the Zmo. The Zmo's blows would be thrown at the air, thus wasting energy for no gain. When, on the other hand, the king's daughter was about to strike, the horse would drop quickly towards the Zmo's horse, and she would strike into his bare flesh. They fought so hard the earth shook beneath them. Eventually, the king's daughter was able to bring her sword crossways and cut off the Zmo's head. Then, leaving his carcass to the crows and the magpies to feast on, she and Yellow Sun continued their journey. Eventually, they reached the place where the horde of mares was. The mares were grazing peacefully by themselves, without any steed in sight. The horse told the king's daughter to climb up a tree. As soon as she did, he neighed 3 times. The entire horde of mares gathered around him. Then the steed appeared, foaming at the mouth and snorting from fury. When he saw Yellow Sun amongst his mares, he charged against him with fury. A fight broke out between them. From her hiding place up in the tree, the king's daughter could see what was happening. She saw that when the steed was attacking Yellow Sun, he was biting chunks from the buffalo's skins, leaving Yellow Sun unharmed. On the other hand, when Yellow Sun was attacking the steed, he was biting from bare flesh. They fought until the steed, wounded from head to tail and full of blood, was conquered. Yellow Sun escaped unharmed, covered by the buffalo skins, which had been torn to shreds. The king's daughter climbed down from the tree and mounted Yellow Sun. They took charge of the horde of mares, guiding them from the back, while the steed barely dragged himself behind them. And they brought the horde of mares and the steed into the king's yard. The king's daughter went to let them know they had accomplished their task. In the meantime, Ileana Samsiana came out into the yard and called her beloved animals by their name. The steed, as soon as he heard her call his name, shook himself 3 times and made himself whole again, without a single wound left on him. Ileana Samsiana said to the king to ask someone to milk the mares, so they could have a bath in their milk. But who could get anywhere near them? At the slightest attempt, the mares were kicking so hard with their hooves that anything they hit would fly off. As nobody could approach them, the king once again ordered the king's daughter to take on the task. The king's daughter was outraged that it was always she who was asked to undertake the most difficult tasks, but as she had a clear conscience, she prayed to God to help her bring this task to a good end. As soon as she finished her prayer, a heavy rain started pouring in buckets. Soon the water reached the knees of the mares. The rain was followed by a severe frost which kept the mares glued to their spot. Seeing this miracle, the king's daughter thanked God for his help and started milking the mares. The king could no longer contain his love for Ileana Samsiana, who was looking at her like to a ripe cherry tree. She, however, did not even deign to look at him, but kept postponing the wedding day after day. I see, wise king, that I have received all I have asked for, she told him. I only need one more thing, and then we can marry. My dove, the king answered, my kingdom and myself are your obedient servants. Ask for anything you want, and I will make sure you get it, because I cannot contain my love for you. I have become dizzy. I dream while awake. I no longer know what I am doing when I look into your beautiful eyes. Bring me the baptism urn, which is kept in a little church over the Jordan waters, Ileana Samsiana said, and then we can marry. The king called the king's daughter to him and ordered her to do whatever it takes to bring back what Ileana Samsiana had asked for. The king's daughter went to tell Yellow Sun of the latest order and to ask what she should do. This is the last and most difficult task you have to accomplish, he said, but put your trust in God because the king's days are numbered. They got ready and left. On the way, Yellow Sun told the king's daughter, the baptism urn is located on a table in the middle of a small church and is guarded by a group of nuns. They do not sleep day and night. From time to time, however, a hermit visits them and tells them of the holy things. When they are assembled to listen to what the hermit is teaching them, only one remains on guard. If we could arrive at time, things will work out well. If not, who knows how long we'll have to wait, because that is the only way. They went, therefore, over the Jordan waters and reached the small church. Luckily, the hermit had just arrived and assembled the nuns to listen to him. Only one had remained on guard, and this one, being tired due to the long wait, had started drifting off to sleep. She took precautionary measures, however, and laid herself to sleep on the threshold. She thought that by doing so, nobody could get in without waking her up. Yellow Sun taught the king's daughter what to do to get hold of the baptism urn. The girl sneaked along the wall, and gently walking on the tips of her toes, she reached the door. As nimble as a cat, she jumped over the threshold, not even touching the nun who had fallen asleep. Grabbing hold of the urn, she came out as she had entered, got on the horse, and set off. The nun heard Yellow Sun galloping in the distance and jumped up. Seeing that the urn was missing, she started screaming and wailing so bitterly would melt anyone's heart. The other nuns immediately gathered around her and started wailing about the theft of their beloved urn. The hermit, seeing that the urn was beyond reach, looked towards the king's daughter as she was flying away on Yellow Sun. With his hands up to the sky and kneeling, he cursed her. "Holy Lord," he said, "make it so that the unlawful one, who has dared to put their unholy hands on the baptism urn, becomes a woman, if they are a man. If they are a woman, make them become a man." The hermit's prayer was immediately heeded. The king's daughter became a young man, so handsome you would fall in love looking at him. As the young lad reached the king's court, he felt that he was no longer the way he was when he had left. Now he was handsomer and fiercer. "Powerful king," he said as he handed over the urn, "I have undertaken the things you have asked me with. I hope that now I have finished. Be happy and reign in peace, for as long as the Lord's mercy will be with you." "I am satisfied with the way you have completed your tasks," said the king. "After my death, it is you who will take the reins of the kingdom, because until now I have had no heir, and if God will give me a son, you will be his right hand." Ileana Samsiana, seeing that her latest request had been granted, decided to take her revenge on the king for always sending out her beloved to complete all the dangerous tasks. She ordered to heat up the bath so that she and the king could bathe in the milk of her mares. After she got into the bath, she ordered to bring in the steed to blow cold air. The steed blew from one nostril cool air towards her, and with the other nostril fiery air towards the king. Even the king's insides got boiled, and he died on the spot. There was a big uproar throughout the garden when the people heard of the death of the mighty and powerful king. People from all parts gathered and organized a funeral fit for an almighty king. After this, Ileana Sansiana said to Prince Charming, "It is you who brought me here, you who brought my horde of mares and the steed guarding them, you who killed the Zmo who had kidnapped me, you who brought me the baptism urn, it is you whom I choose as my husband. Let's have a bath and get married." They agreed and got into the bath. Ileana called her steed to warm up the milk in which they would bathe. The new king also called in Yellow Sun, and the two horses competed over who would make the most comfortable bath for their master. After bathing together, they got married the next day and ascended to the throne of the kingdom. The feast lasted 3 weeks long. Everyone was happy that God had given them such a brave king, who had already accomplished so many great deeds, and he reigned with righteousness and fear of God, protecting the poor and not oppressing anyone. The king and queen may still be reigning to this day if they haven't yet died. I happened to be around gawking at the wedding feast. Then I got onto my horse and told you the story thus. Translator's note: the girl who would be king. As I mentioned in the introduction, this was the story that started this entire translation project for me. I was amazed and delighted to find a full-grown transgender story in the Romanian Book of Fairy Tales, let alone one dating from the 19th century. This tale's original title is Ileana Samsiana, which is strange, as she is not the main protagonist. In translating and adapting the story, I wanted the title to reflect that this is a transgender story. Of course, this is not a transgender story in the contemporary sense of the word. The protagonist does not experience body dysmorphia, nor do they show any sense of struggling with their identity or the way they are perceived by others. At the end, they seem to simply embrace the transformation and go along with it. However, I find the existence of a 19th century story in which the character starts out as female and ends up as a male simply extraordinary before being collected and published by Petre Ispirescu. This story must have traveled from person to person, being told and retold many times over a long period of time. How extraordinary that this story has resonated with enough people that it has survived long enough to be written down formally. Even more extraordinary is the fact that it was published as part of the most celebrated collection of fairy tales in the Romanian language. Of course, it is ironic that a story that seems so far ahead of its time would display so many patriarchal values. As a woman living in the 21st century, I found some of the judgments about the differences between men and women somewhat difficult to digest. I made the choice to keep these elements, as they were integral to the story. However, I did take out one particularly offensive line towards the end. In that line, the new king says to Ileana Samsiana something along the lines of, but do not forget who wears the trousers in this relationship. That line simply had to go. As you have been reading the story, you may have wondered about the use of the title Prince Charming, which appears several times in my translation. The original is Fat Frumos, which is a name often given to the male hero in Romanian fairy tales. Oh. A literal translation might be handsome youth or lad handsome. Frumos means handsome, and fat refers to a young man. I chose Prince Charming as this name fits the hero's role in the story and is well known to English speaking readers. While reading, you may have also wondered what Zmo is. The Zmo, plural Zmei, is a monster like creature that appears in many Romanian fairy tales, legends, and myths. Because the Zmo appears so often in these stories, this creature is never described, presumably because the people listening to these tales had a common understanding of what a Zmo looks like. However, it is worth pointing out that there is no formal consensus over what a Zmo looks like. This lack of clear description is perhaps why the Zmo is so popular in Romanian fairy tales. Its monster-like features can easily be adapted by the storyteller to take the shape of whatever is needed by the narrative. Some depictions show the Zmo as more human-like, while in others the Zmo seems to share a stronger resemblance to dragons. If you're curious, I suggest you type the word into Google Images and enjoy the many different representations you will find. I think that's genius, honestly. I decided to add a short yet somewhat vague description of the Zmo, fearsome human-like creatures with magic powers, in my translated version. My intention was to indicate to the reader that the word refers to a fantastic creature that is part of Romanian folklore, while at the same time not limiting the reader's imagination to my own mental image of a Zmo. The Zmo shares many human features. Based on what happens in the stories, we can tell that the Zmo has arms and legs, as well as the ability to ride a horse and use weapons. On the other hand, the Zmo is often described as having a tail and being able to blow fire through their mouth, as well as being bigger and stronger than humans. In some stories, the Zmo also has other magical powers, such as being able to shapeshift, often as part of the plan to trap and defeat the hero. In most cases, the Zmo is an evil, cunning creature that attempts to kidnap a beautiful maiden and force her into becoming his wife, as is the case with Ileana Samsiana in the tale you have just read. The Zmo is often helped by his mother, who usually has a whole range of magic powers and chases after the hero, or attempts to outwit him once her son has been defeated. Although, as you can see in the story, the Zmo is not always destructive. In this story, for instance, you encounter two mother-son Zmo pairings, where you can observe different kinds of behavior. The first Zmo and his mother are courteous towards the king's daughter and largely helpful. Even though they could kidnap her or not fulfill their promise of handing Yellow Sun to her, they do none of these things. However, this kind of behavior is not common among the Zmei you will encounter in most Romanian fairy tales. The actions of the second mother-son Zmo pair are more common, and the way the Zmo is often portrayed in Romanian fairy tales. The interactions with the second pair also show many beloved tropes: kidnapping a beautiful maiden who has to be rescued by the hero, the chase and the many obstacles the hero has to put up in order to escape, and the attempt by the mother of the Zmo to kill through blowing fire on the hero, which seems to be undoing of many of the Zmo mothers, as this attempt generally fails. If you decide to read more of my translated stories of Petre Ispirescu's collection, you will no doubt see some of these tropes in action in a variety of different stories. It's okay, I didn't like it. I don't remember Gilligan's Island that well. Um, I remember liking it, but I don't remember it very well. hmm I'm so glad the chat is working. I'm so glad. Anyway, the magic bull. There was once an old man and an old woman. The old man had a son from his first wife, and the old woman was a daughter from her first husband. The old woman couldn't stand the old man's son. "Husband," she said one day, "if you don't send your son away from here, I will no longer be your wife." "Where would I send him?" said the old man. "Let him grow up some more, and then we'll send him to his own home." "No, I want him out of the house now. You must choose between him and me." The old man, seeing there's no way around this with his wife, said to the boy, "My son, I'm old as you can see. I am not as strong as I used to be. Your stepmother wants you to leave. Go wherever God will lead you to earn your living." "I can see that my stepmother can't stand me," the boy said. "I don't know why. I haven't disobeyed her. I do everything she asks, but in vain. I will go wherever God will lead me, and I will find my way to earn my living. I have youth on my side, and when you'll be able to, Dad, come and see me, because otherwise I will shrivel up from missing you. Stay in good health, my son, and may God help you." "Stay well, Dad." And the poor boy left home with tears running down his cheeks. He went out into the world to look for work and eventually came across a wealthy man who hired him as his servant. The boy worked as a servant for 7 years and his master was happy with him. But eventually the boy started missing his father so much he couldn't bear it any longer, so he told his master if he would like to go home. "Lad, you have served me for 7 years," his master said. "I like how you served me. Does my bread no longer taste good to you, or is anyone offering you more elsewhere? Is that why you want to leave my service?" "No, master, but I am homesick, and I would like to see my father again. If you feel I am due anything after my service, please let me have it before I go." "Fine, lad, you can't keep a servant against their will. But when you started working for me, we didn't strike up an agreement about how much I loved you. How much I owed you when you left. But as payment for the work you have done for me, I will let you choose from my herd 2 large animals and 10 small ones." When the boy heard that he is given so much, he thought his master was joking. "Master, you said you liked the way I served you," he said. "Why are you making fun of me? Are you not happy with the payment I am giving you?" "Of course I am, master, but you know I haven't bargained with you, so you can give me whatever you like. If what you say is true, then I feel it is too much unless you are jesting with me." "I didn't mean to jest, lad. There's no reason to. You have behaved honorably and have served me loyally. The animals I have told you to choose are fitting for your service." The lad couldn't contain his joy, especially when he realized that it was through his labor that he had earned so many animals. He went to the smaller animals, looked at each of them in turn, and wondered which ones to choose. He didn't want to choose from among the best animals, because he didn't think his work was worth as much. He also didn't want to choose the worst ones, because his heart wouldn't let him. He therefore chose from among the animals in the middle. He was going to do the same with the large animals, but when it came to choosing those, his attention fell upon a bull, which was looking at the boy with a mischievous twinkle in his eye. The boy chose this bull and a cow. Then he set off on his way home, hoping that bringing this much wealth with him will appease his stepmother's resentment toward him. When the boy reached home, his father was overwhelmed with joy. His son had grown into a handsome young lad. But his stepmother hated him just as much as before. The son helped his father with all the work in the field and with taking the animals out to pasture. He did everything he could to make himself useful to the household, but his stepmother kept thinking up new ways to make his life a misery. In the mornings, when he would take the animals to pasture, his stepmother would give him a cake to eat as his lunch. But she would bake it out of the ashes from the fireplace, and he couldn't eat it. At lunchtime, instead of eating like everyone else, he would sit underneath the shadow of a tree, feeling sorry for himself. He didn't want to tell his father so as not to cause any trouble, nor was he getting any peace at home. This was making him sad, deep in thought, and without joy. One day, while crying from hunger at lunchtime, the bull, whom the boy had named Tailorus, started speaking to him. "Master, don't be sad," Tailorus said. "Forget the cake made of ashes. Take my right horn, and eat and drink whatever you want out of it." The lad was stunned to hear this bull speaking to him. "Listen to my advice," Tailorus said. "You are a good lad, and I feel pity for you. You are wasting your youth crying about things that cannot be changed. Do as I say, and you will see that it works." The boy took the right horn from Tailorus. Inside it, he was astounded to find a loaf of bread as white as snow and a glass of wine that would make you lick your lips. He ate and drank to his heart's content. His stepmother noticed after a while that the lad's face had become fuller, and that he was doing everything with great joy. Instead of watching him waste away, she had hoped he was starving. She suspected that Tailorus must be the cause of the boy's newfound happiness. The boy was fussing over him and spending more time with him than with the other animals. She asked her daughter to follow the boy and watch what he does when taking the animals to pasture. Her daughter followed him, saw everything, and returned to her mother and said, "Mother, what I saw today is beyond belief. My stepbrother's bull has magic powers. Didn't I tell you there must be something odd about that bull? You should have seen, Mother, how my stepbrother would take the bull by the neck and kiss him on one side or on another, making my heart go all fluttery. Then at noon he took his right horn and got out of it some bread, white and well baked, and some wine, and he ate them with such joy I felt hungry watching him. But what really shocked me was that I heard the bull talking. I must find a way to get rid of that bull," the mother said. The following day she told her husband he was to slaughter the bull, started nagging him relentlessly about it. The poor old man tried in vain to stand his ground. He told her the bull wasn't theirs to slaughter, it belonged to his son. When this didn't work, he told her that the bull was beautiful and would come in useful one day. But his wife kept nagging him and wouldn't let go until she made him agree to slaughter the bull. The boy, fortunately, was clever and heard it all. As soon as daylight came, he went to Tailorus and told him what was about to happen. The bull told him to wait on the porch. When they will chase him to bring him to slaughter, Tailorus will pass by the porch. The boy will jump on his back and they will run away together. This is what they did. After escaping death, Tailorus took his master to a forest more beautiful than the lad had ever seen. Close by were some orchards with grass to graze on, always green and in bloom. There they made a hut and lived a life of plenty. One day the boy was sitting in front of the hut playing his flute, while Tailorus was grazing in the nearby orchard. An enormous bull came by so fat he seemed to be bursting out of his skin. "Why did you come here, lad, with your bull and drink my water and eat my grass?" he asked. "I didn't know this was your land," the lad said. "My bull brought me here. Tell him to come tomorrow morning to the golden attic to fight me." After that he left. Into the evening, Tailorus found the boy sadder than ever. "What is it, master? Why are you sad?" Tailorus asked. The boy told Tailorus everything the fat bull had said. "Leave it to me, master. Don't worry about it." The next morning Tailorus left the boy at the hut. He went to the golden attic and fought the other bull. Tailorus emerged victorious and placed the other bull's corpse underneath the attic. Then he returned home safe and unharmed. 2 days later another bull came by, not as big as the first. He told the boy the same as the previous one, and asked that Tailorus fights him at the silver attic. As the first time, Tailorus found the boy crying and sad. He calmed him down before and went to fight the other bull. After emerging victorious, he put the other bull's corpse underneath the attic as well. Several days later, another bull came. This one was thin, ugly, and full of scabs. He told the boy, "Who has given you permission to come here with your bull, drink my water, and graze on my grass?" "What is it to you?" the boy said. "If it wasn't any concern to me, who else should it be?" said the bull. "Which of you two will dare fight with me should come tomorrow to the copper attic." "Go in peace," the boy said. "We'll come." When Tailorus returned from grazing in the evening, the boy joyfully told him everything that had happened. "Your joy isn't good, master," the bull said. "Now my turn has come. That bull, scabby and skinny, will conquer me. You should be present at our fight. I won't let you fight with him. You are young, naive, and you have much to see in this world. Once he has vanquished me and has put me underneath the attic, jump in and take my left horn. Don't open it until you get back home." When the boy heard this, he could not stop crying. His heart hurt so much he couldn't sleep all night. Early next morning, Tailorus went to the copper attic. There he waited for the downtrodden bull. When the bull arrived, they started to fight. When they fought and fought until towards noon. At times Tailorus was bringing the other bull down. At other times the downtrodden bull was bringing Tailorus down. Then they fought with their horns, and neither of them could conquer the other. By the afternoon, Tailorus had lost much of his power. The other bull charged against him and put him underneath the attic. The boy jumped in and took his left horn. He lingered by the attic, crying and crying. But when towards dusk Tailorus still hadn't come back from underneath the attic, the boy left carrying the horn, crushed by grief. He spent the night on a little hill. The next day he was famished. He thought he might find some food inside the horn he had taken from Tailorus and opened it. Suddenly, a multitude of cattle and flocks and all sorts of animals came out. How could he get them all home? He didn't know how to put them back into the horn, and he would have needed an army of servants to herd them homewards. He started to cry bitterly. While he was crying, a dragon came by and said, "What will you give me, boy, to put all these animals back inside the horn?" "I will give you half of them," the boy said. "That's not what I want," the dragon said. "I want something else." "Tell me what you want. I want you to promise that when you least expect it, I can take the one thing you love most and devour it." The boy, without realizing what he was doing, agreed to the bargain. The dragon cracked his tail 3 times and put all the cattle back inside the horn. Then the boy took the horn and returned to his father. He found his father on his own because the old woman and her daughter had abandoned him. When the old man saw his son having become a man, he was overcome with happiness. His son opened the horn, and suddenly the entire field and all the neighboring fields filled up with animals. "All these are yours?" the old man asked. "Yes, Dad. What should we do with so many animals?" "Soothe the troubles of the widows and the poor," the old man said. The boy listened to his father's advice. Every day from then on, he did good to those who needed help. Eventually, there wasn't a single poor person left in their village. News traveled to the royal court about the riches and mercy of the old man's son. The king had a wise and beautiful young daughter, and he decided the old man's son would make an excellent son-in-law. He therefore sent messengers to the boy to offer him his daughter's hand in marriage. The boy was He therefore sent messengers to the boy to offer him his daughter's hand in marriage. The boy was surprised to hear about the king's offer. He went to the royal court and behaved with much grace and wisdom. The king was delighted with his choice, and his daughter fell in love with the boy because he was handsome and clever. They soon came to an agreement, and the young couple got married. The boy's father, who had been invited to the wedding, waited until after the dancing and rejoicing had died down and everyone was on their way home. Then, following an old custom, he went to the couple's bedroom and put a loaf of white bread on the table. Then he returned home. During the night, the dragon appeared before the boy and told him he was coming to get his end of the bargain. He asked him to hand over his bride, whom the boy loved with all his heart, so the dragon could devour her. The old man's son, who had forgotten about this agreement, didn't know what to do. He didn't want to fight with the dragon to kill him, because he knew this had been their agreement. The father had taught him that how one word of honor turns out, so does the soul. But nor could he bear letting his beloved get devoured by the dragon. He was overcome by inner turmoil about what to do so he doesn't break his word, yet doesn't let his bride die a horrible death. Suddenly the loaf of bread on the table started to jump and say, "He has sown me, I have grown. He has cut me with the sickle, has tied me in bundles, and I have put up with it. You put up with it too," and disappear into the depths of the ocean. The dragon kept still and listened. The bread spoke again. "Afterwards the horses stepped on me, and he took me to the mill. Put up with it like I have, and go away so we don't hear from you again." The dragon kept listening, but the tongues in his mouth were playing like lightning. The bride and groom kept quiet. The bread spoke again. "Then he ground me, and after bringing me home, he put me through a sieve, mixed me with water, put me in the oven, baked me to make my eyes pop, and I put up with it too. Blasted dragon, may you burst." The noise the dragon made when he burst was so great that everyone in the royal palace heard it and woke up. When they rushed to the matrimonial suite, what did they find? An enormous dragon, burst and sliced. He was so large everyone got a fright. They took the corpse outside the palace and gave it to the crows to eat. Then the groom told everyone the entire story. When the people in the palace heard, they thanked God that a miracle had happened to save the bride and groom from harm. The young couple lived in peace, doing good everywhere. They might still be alive today if they hadn't yet died. And I got into a saddle and told you the story thus. Translators note the magic bull. The original title of the story is Tailerus, which is the name of the magic bull. If you are a non-Romanian speaker and want to have a go at pronouncing this name, oh, so it's one of those S's with a fancy. Okay. The S at the end is pronounced sh. Tailerus. You may have raised an eyebrow at the part of the story where the king offers the boy his daughter's hand in marriage. At that point in the story, there is no mention of the girl's interest in her potential future husband. As a translator, I chose not to add anything to this part of the story about the girl's potential interest, as I feel it is important that I stay true to the original as much as possible. However, I feel it is important to draw your attention to this part of the story in case you choose to tell this story yourself. If you wanted, it would be easy to add something at this point that gives the girl more agency and choice. Maybe the daughter could have heard the boy's reputation and became interested in meeting him. Perhaps the father was acting in accordance to his daughter's wishes. For any storytellers out there wanting to use this tale, These kinds of additions may make the story more relevant to a contemporary audience. The dragon in the story is a bal- balwar, which is the Romanian version of this type of creature. I chose not to use the Romanian term, as depictions of the balwar show a creature that any Western readers would easily recognize as a dragon. However, it is worth noting that in some Romanian stories, the term balwar can occasionally refer to any monster-like creature, not just dragons. The Fairy Queen. Once upon a time there was a powerful king who had 3 sons. As the sons were nearing marrying age, the king started to wonder how to help them find their soulmate so they could have happy marriages. One night, the king had a dream that provided him with an answer. The next day, he called his sons, and they went to the top of a high tower. He asked each of his sons to strike an arrow. "Where your arrow falls," the king said, "that is where you will find your soulmate." The sons obeyed their father because they trusted him. Then they struck their arrow, and that of the eldest son fell on the roof of the palace belonging to a neighboring king. The middle son's arrow fell on the roof of the house belonging to one of the highest-ranking aristocrats, but the arrow of the youngest son flew into the heights of the sky. They all craned their necks looking for it and almost lost it from sight. Then they saw it falling down and landing into a tall tree in the middle of a large forest. The eldest son went to the neighboring king's court, where he got engaged to the king's daughter and brought her back to his father. The middle son went to the house of the high-ranking aristocrat, where he got engaged to the aristocrat's daughter and also brought her back to his father. The youngest set off as well, but he did not know where to go. He scoured the earth until he eventually found the largest forest where his arrow had landed. He made his way through the undergrowth until he found the tree into which his arrow had struck. The tree was tall, thick, and old. The boy climbed it until he reached a spot where he could hang from one of its branches, and from branch to branch, at times hanging from his hands, at times from his feet, crossed and held tightly together, he reached the top of the tree. There he grabbed the arrow and pulled it out. He climbed down with his soul full of bitterness and sadness. He worried that he would never find his soulmate, because what is there to find in that tree? As if it hadn't been enough that he hadn't found the one destined for him, and that he had made this whole trip in vain, he realized, as he was about to leave the tree, that an owl was hanging from his back. He tried wiggling his back in all directions, but the owl had stuck her claws into his back and would not let go. He twisted and turned to escape the plague, but there was no way. Seeing that nothing worked, he decided to return home with the owl on his back and figure out later how to get rid of it. On the way, he noticed that 6 other owls were also following him. He went to the poor lad with the flock of owls following him. He arranged to arrive home at night so he wouldn't be laughed at by anyone he would encounter. As soon as he entered his bedroom, the 6 owls perched themselves wherever they found a spot, and the 7th owl, which had fastened itself to his back, unfastened herself and jumped into his bed. As he was exhausted from the long journey and all the mishaps along the way, he fell asleep as soon as his head hit the pillow, as if someone had knocked him out. The next day he couldn't believe his eyes when he found next to him in bed a fairy so beautiful that whoever would look at her would remain speechless. And at the end of the bed were 6 female servants, one more beautiful than the other. He also saw in the corner of the room 7 owl skins thrown one on top of the other. When his parents met the fairy and her servants, they were overwhelmed by their beauty. Not long passed, and the day of the eldest brother's wedding arrived. The youngest son went to the celebrations with his fiancée. There was no one like her in the entire kingdom, and he was proud to show her off. All the wedding guests were overwhelmed by her beauty, and she was already taken. The other king's son, who had been invited to the wedding, were flirting with their servants, competing with one another for the opportunity to dance with them. In the evening they went to dinner and feasted late into the night. The king's youngest son slept well that night, but when he got up in the morning and saw the owl skins lying next to the bed, he felt disgusted. Soon the middle son's wedding day arrived. The youngest son was once again accompanied by the fairy. His heart was full of joy and pride, especially as he could see all the other king's sons were following her every move and pining after her. To distract themselves, they were dancing with the fairy servants. In the evening they went to dinner. The youngest son, tempted by the devil, got up from the table, went to his room, and cast the owl skins into the fire. Then he returned to the table without telling his fiancée what he had done. "Mistress, we are in danger," one of the servants screamed as soon as he returned. "Mistress, I can smell burning," another one said. "Bad things are about to happen to us." "Be quiet," the fairy said. "You are probably imagining things and disturbing this wonderful dinner." But a third servant said, "Mistress, there is no escape. We have been betrayed." Meanwhile, the fairy, too, had started sensing that something was wrong. Suddenly they all got up from the table and transformed into doves. Then the fairy said to the youngest son, "You have betrayed my trust. I will now leave, and you will never see me again unless you find my dwelling place, which no other human has so far managed to do." They flew up into the sky and disappeared from view. In vain did the wedding guests ask the youngest son to return to the table, nor did his parents and brothers succeed in making him forget his grief. His eyes kept searching for the doves. The next day before dawn he got ready to look for his fiancée. Without her, life lost its meaning. He said goodbye to his family and went on his quest. He passed hills, valleys, and dark forests through which nobody had walked before. He made his way through marshes and ponds, yet could not find the flock of doves. The lad was wrestling with himself, searching, looking, questioning, but he was not making any progress. When his heart broken, his soul crushed from grief and burning from lost love, he was pushing himself beyond the point of exhaustion, but all in vain. At times the thought crossed his mind that he could simply end his life, throw himself into an abyss, or smash his skull against some mountain crags, but his heart seemed to tell him that one day all these troubles would come to an end. In those moments he would come back to himself and continue his journey with even more zeal. The hope that was keeping him going was that whoever searches in detail and persistently is bound to find a way to accomplish the task they have set themselves. One day, broken from exhaustion, he went into a clearing to rest for a little while, and while sitting there he drifted off to sleep. He suddenly heard voices and woke up. To his amazement, he saw 3 devils arguing with one another. They were so passionate about their argument they were foaming at the mouth. He went to them and said, "Argument without a fight is like a wedding without the band." "Your words make no sense," they responded. "But we were not arguing, we were only disagreeing." "And what were you disagreeing over?" he asked. "Because the racket you are making is loud enough to wake up the dead." "It's about the fact that we have inherited from our father a pair of galoshes, a hat, and a whip, and we cannot agree who should take what." "And what are they good for, these items you are disagreeing over?" "When someone puts on the galoshes, they are able to walk over the sea as if it was dry land. When they put on the hat, not even the devil can see them, even when poking him in the eye with his finger. And if someone takes the whip in their hand and hits their enemies with it, whoever gets hit will transform into stone. You are right to disagree, because without the other items, each of your inheritance aren't worth 2 frozen onions. If you are prepared to listen to what I am about to suggest, I may be able to give you justice." "We are listening," the devil said in one voice. "Tell us what to do." "Can you see those 3 mountains ahead of you? Each of you should climb up one of them. Whoever will be the first to return after I have given you a signal can take ownership of all 3 items." "What a great suggestion! That's what we'll do. Well done. Looks like we have found the person to do us justice." And they immediately set off towards the mountains, each going towards a different one. In the meantime, our lad put the galoshes on his feet, the hat on his head, and took the whip in his hand. So the devils reached the top of the mountains and waited for the signal. The king's youngest son cracked his whip once in front of each mountain and turned the devils into stone. Then he went on his way, letting his heart guide him. He had barely taken 10 steps when he saw above him a flock of 7 doves. He followed them with his eyes until he saw where they landed, and he set off in that direction. His galoshes made it possible to walk over oceans, rivers, and large expanses of water, as if walking on dry land. Then he made his way through cities and deserts until he reached a mountain so tall it seemed to touch the sky. That is where the doves had landed. He started climbing the mountain, and from cave to cave, from crag to crag, from precipice to precipice, climbing at times along the edges, at times along the slopes, he reached the cave. He went into the cave and was thunderstruck when he found a palace built with such craft you cannot find on this earth. There lived his fiancée, the fairy queen. As soon as he saw her walking through the gardens with the servants following her, he recognized her. A cute little boy was following her too, running, playing among the flowers, and asking the fairy to show him this or that butterfly. It looks like the fairy has been pregnant while she was flown from the dinner table, and this was their son. The king's son could barely contain his happiness. He wanted to run like a madman, to take his son in his arms and kiss him, but he refrained from doing so because he did not want to scare him. Nobody had seen him yet, as he was made invisible by using his hat. Evening had started to fall, and he still hadn't decided how to show himself. Eventually he heard the servants inviting the fairy to the table for dinner. He went as well and sat himself in between the fairy and his son. The servants brought in the food. He was famished, as it had been a long time since he had eaten properly, so he started eating. The fairy wondered how it was that the food was getting eaten so quickly. She ordered more food, but even this food got eaten within instants. While eating, he would at times lift his hat a little towards the child. "Look at Daddy, Mummy." the boy said the first time he saw his father. Your father, my dear, won't come to us until he learns some powerful magic, his mother said. The king's son quickly pulled the hat back over his eyes and got back to eating. He was eating so much you'd think a pack of wolves were fighting over the food. After he finished this food too, the fairy, baffled by this, asked for more. The king's son once again showed himself to the boy, overjoyed that his son had recognized him. The child once again told his mother. She told him off because she could not believe that her fiancé was ever going to learn to perform magic that would allow him to find her. She knew that no living being from the other world could reach the place where they lived unless they were able to use powerful magic. The child was silent because his father had pulled the hat back over his eyes again. The king's son continued eating until his food, too, was all gone. He kept eating, yet was still hungry for more. As there was no food left to bring to the table, the fairy started worrying that there was nothing left for the servants. When once again the little boy cried out, "Mom, I swear it's Dad." "So where is he, then? What are you on about?" "I'm not about anything. Look, there next to me. He is taking me into his arms." The fairy got a fright when she heard this, but the little boy wouldn't stop until his father decided to show himself to reassure his fiancée. "Here I am," he said, taking off his hat. "You did not believe our son when he told you he saw me. I did not know what to believe when I saw those disgusting skins. I thought I was doing well setting them on fire, to help you get rid of them." "It's how we've been destined to suffer," the fairy said. "Leave all these past things be, and tell me how you managed to reach this place." And after they told each other about all that had happened and all their mishaps, they embraced, kissed their son, stayed together. After a while, the king's son persuaded the fairy to return to the world of humans. They went to the king, the lad's father, and there they had a wedding so big it became famous throughout the entire world. As the king was getting older, his people asked that his youngest son follow him to the throne, because he had a good mind and was fair in his judgment, and they lived and ruled in great happiness, so much that their name was preserved for all eternity. And I got into a saddle and told you the story thus. Translator's note: The Fairy Queen. The original title is Zanalor, which in a literal translation would be the Fairy of Fairies. In my translation, I said that the middle brother's arrow falls on the house of one of the highest-ranking aristocrats. In the original, the actual term used is Wyar. This points to a person of high status in Romanian feudal system, but it does not have an exact translation in the English language. I chose to use aristocrat because this is the closest Western equivalent. However, I thought I should mention the word boyar here in case you would like to look up this interesting role within the Romanian feudal system. Another translation choice I made is that in the original version, the 6 women serving the Fairy Queen are described as her slaves. However, using the word slave makes me feel deeply uncomfortable, and I would guess many readers would feel the same way. I therefore chose to use the word servant instead. This word does not detract from the story itself, yet is more relatable to our modern-day perspective. Overall, I was delighted to find this tale as it provides an alternative to a well-known and much-loved story trope. We are familiar with a woman having to go through many trials to correct a mistake she has made and win back the love of her life. The female version of this quest appears in stories that are well known in the West, such as East of the Sun and West of the Moon, and the story of Eros and Psyche. In Petre Ispirescu's collection, you will find this trope in Princess Pig, which is the headline story in Princess Pig and other Romanian fairy tales, but in this story it is the male character who has to go on a quest. This is a refreshing alternative to the better-known story trope depicting the female quest. Death's Call. There was once a man who would pray to God every day to make him rich. His frequent prayers found God in a good mood one day, and God listened. As the man got rich, he started wondering whether he could live forever. He decided to go from country to country until he would find a place where people didn't die. He prepared for the trip, told his wife what he was intending, and set off on his journey. In each country he visited, he asked if people die in that place. If the answer was that they did, he would continue his journey. One day he reached a country where people hadn't heard of death. "How do you avoid overcrowding?" the man asked, "if people don't die?" "Now and again we hear someone calling us. Whoever answers the call doesn't come back." "And do the people see the person who comes to call?" he asked. "Of course they do," he was told. The man was surprised at the stupidity of these people who go after the one calling him, when they know full well they won't come back. He returned home, took his entire fortune, his wife, his children, and set off to settle in a strange place where people don't die. He decided that he and his family members would never go after whoever was to call them. After they settled in the new place, he taught his wife and his children not to go with whoever was to call them, so they would avoid death. They set about living, and a few years passed. One day, as they were all at home having a good time, his wife shouted, "I'm coming now, I'm coming now," and she put on her coat. Our man jumped up and restrained her. "Have you forgotten what I have taught you?" he said. "Don't go, or you will die. Can't you see someone is calling me? I'm going to see what he wants, and I will return straight away." She kept trying to escape her husband's arms, to follow the one who was calling her. Her husband overpowered her and locked all the exits to the house. "Let me be, I'm not going anywhere," she said, when she saw that she could not escape. Her husband, thinking she had come to her senses, loosened the security measures he had put in place, but as soon as he had done so, the woman threw herself at one of the doors he had unlocked and rushed out. Her husband ran after her and grabbed her by the coat, telling her not to go because she won't return. She twisted herself out of his hold and the coat slipped off her shoulders. Her husband was left holding her coat. He was stunned as he watched her running as fast as she could. I'm coming," she kept shouting. "If you're crazy and want to die, there's nothing I can do about it," he said. "I have told you how to avoid death, but if you want to die, it's your choice." After she disappeared from view, our man returned home. Days, weeks, months, years passed without anything else happening to shatter the family's peace. One day, as was his custom, our man was at the barber's having a shave. The shop was full of people. His beard was covered in foam. "I'm not coming," he shouted all of a sudden. The barber and the other customers were stunned. Our man started looking towards the door. "Please understand once and for all and leave me, because I'm not coming," he said. Later he said again, "Go away if you want to escape without shame. I have already told you I'm not coming." It was as if someone was standing by the door calling him continuously. He kept getting more and more angry that he wasn't being left in peace. In the end, he jumped and took the knife out of the barber's hand. "Come here," he said, "so I show you what happens if you keep bothering me." And he ran out the door in great haste, chasing the one who kept calling him and whom nobody else could see. The barber started running after him to get his knife back. The man ran the barber after him until they got to an area just outside the town. The man fell into a precipice and never came back out, the same as all the others who had been called. The barber returned to his shop, accepting the loss of his knife. He told everyone what had happened. Messages were sent throughout the country, telling everyone about that precipice. Until then, nobody had been able to figure out what happened to the people who were being called. But when a crowd gathered to search for the precipice, they couldn't find it. All they found was a valley, which seemed to have been there since the beginning of time. From then on, people started dying in that place too, as they do everywhere else. Translator's note: Death's Call. I absolutely love translating this little gem of a story. It is one of the many unexpected delights in Petre Ispirescu's collection of tales. This premise of someone trying to find a place where there is no death may be particularly enticing for fantasy or sci-fi writers looking for their next big idea. The original title is Glasul Mortsi, which translates to Death's Voice or the Voice of Death. If you enjoyed reading this brief story about a character struggling to come to terms with his own mortality, I recommend the longer and more well-rounded Youth Everlasting, which is the headline story in Youth Everlasting and Other Romanian Fairy Tales. You may also enjoy reading a translation of Mihai Eminescu's extraordinary poem, Luciferul. That poem explores the issue of mortality from the point of view of the morning star Hyperion, who is immortal and wishes to give up his immortality for love. I would like to ask you for a small favor. Reviews are the best way to spread the word about this book. If you have enjoyed reading this book, it would mean a lot to me if you could leave a review. Even if you only write a sentence or two, it will help. Thank you. And I'll type the title of that. That was Oh, I could read this too. About the author. Petre Ispirescu was born in 1830 in Bucharest, where he lived most of his life. He grew up around folk stories and was greatly inspired by them. His parents wanted him to become a priest, a career path that required him to start training since childhood. But at age 14, Ispirescu dropped out of his priest training and took up an apprenticeship at a publishing house. He was a hard worker and quickly rose through the ranks. Eventually, he was able to publish his own projects, which is how his collection of fairy tales came about. He started publishing fairy tales as early as 1862 and continued publishing them over the following 2 decades. Sadly, Petre Ispirescu died from a stroke at age 57. Yet a few of the fairy tales he collected and published are still part of the Romanian literature curriculum to this day. About the translator. Alexa J. Ispas grew up in Romania and moved to Scotland at the age of 18. She holds a PhD in psychology from the University of Edinburgh. Her frequent visits to the Scottish Storytelling Centre inspired her to delve into her Romanian story heritage. These explorations led her to discover old, forgotten Romanian gems that give us a glimpse into a way of life different from our own. You can find more of Alexa's translations of old Romanian stories at www.storybothy.com. Okay, there we go. I actually got that the picture behind me on the wall. I got that like my mom gave that to me as a gift. She found it somewhere unexpected. I'm so glad chat is working again. Like I was really worried about that. I think maybe it did help taking some time before like rushing to live stream again, like so that they have more of a chance to like look it over and see the stream again, like rewatch it or look at the other things or like check to see things. I think too it also helps. I'm wearing makeup right now. At least I hope it's going to help that I'm wearing makeup. And I put my hair up so you could tell that I'm wearing makeup. Can you see? I think crows are cool. Multi-mask. That sounds cool. I haven't heard of that. I just thought the chat is working. I think maybe I go back to library, okay? And it has in parentheses stories. Ispirescu. There we go. And I have two others here which I've not read before. But that wasn't too long, so I should be able to read these two. Yeah, I should be able to read these two. The Mystery of the Dancing Shoes and Other Romanian Fairy Tales by Petre Ispirescu. Introduction written by Alexa J. Ispirescu. Translator. The book you are about to read contains 4 tales that were originally collected and published in Romania during the second half of the 19th century by Petre Ispirescu. I have translated these tales into English and adapted them for a contemporary audience. The headline tale, The Mystery of the Dancing Shoes, follows the story of a young man who falls in love with the youngest of the king's 12 daughters. But in order to, I wonder if it's like the 12 dancing princesses or if it's, anyway, I'll just keep reading. Follows the story of a young man who falls in love with the youngest of the king's 12 daughters. But in order to ask for his beloved's hand in marriage, the first has to figure out how the girls manage to escape their locked bedroom every night to go dancing. He also has to avoid the fate of the previous 11 suitors, who have all disappeared without a trace after attempting to solve the mystery. The second tale, Growl. Growl. I always have a hard time with that word. Grauchanu. Grauchanu is a classic male hero quest. The sun and the moon have been stolen by the evil Zmei, fearsome human-like creatures with magical abilities that appear in many Romanian fairy tales. To defeat the Zmei, young hero Grauchanu will need not only his strength but also his cunning, with twists and turns happening until the very end. King Eliodor, the third tale, features a strong female heroine with powerful magical abilities. As punishment for trespassing on his evil neighbor's land, a young king must bring back the Green King's daughter, but his mission soon turns into a deadly game of hide-and-seek. Will his trio of magical helpers find a way to bring the young king's impossible mission to a good end? The fourth of the tales, The Magic Wolf, follows the story of the king's story of the king's youngest son as he attempts to catch a thief with the help of a shape-shifting wolf. But as the young man gets himself into trouble with the law, the wolf's magical powers may not be enough to overcome the mounting challenges that present themselves at every turn. If this is the first book you are reading in this series, please allow me a few moments to tell you a little bit about the background to these 4 stories. They are part of a larger collection of stories that were first published in the 19th century Romania, though they may have originated at even earlier time. Petre Ispirescu, the collector of these tales, was born in 1830 and had grown up among Romanian fairy tales and had taken up a job at a publishing house. His first published collection dates from 1862, and he continued publishing Romanian fairy tales until close to his death 2 decades later. A couple of the stories he collected and published are part of the literature curriculum in Romanian schools, which is how I first came across them, yet many of them are unknown to most Romanian people. They had certainly been unknown to me until I accidentally stumbled upon Ileana Samțiana a while ago, many years after having moved from my native Romania to start a new life in the UK. I retitled that story, The Girl Who Would Be King. and you can find it as the first story in a book by the same name that is part of this series. I was so surprised and amazed by that story, a transgender fairy tale dating from at least the 19th century Romania, that I made my way through Petre Ispirescu's entire collection. I love the stories in that collection so much that I decided to translate and adapt them for an English speaking contemporary audience and publish them as a series of short, easy to read books. In doing so, I did my best to stay true to the narrative heart of each story, yet filter out elements of racial discrimination and other such aspects that do not sit well with my 21st century values. I have also taken creative license with many of the titles as well as with the sentence structure and length. Following each tale, I have included a translator's note in which I summarize the changes I have made for any readers who would like to know more about how my translated and adapted version differs from the original. I have also used that section to add short pieces of personal commentary focused on various aspects of the story, as well as to point readers to the related articles or other relevant resources that may be of interest. This type of direct message from the translator to the reader is rather unusual in translated works, but I hope that readers will enjoy the transparency and added insight these sections provide. As such, the books in the Romanian story series also represent an experiment in the art of putting together a translated version of a piece of work. If you enjoy these stories, you can find more at www.storybothy.com. The Mystery of the Dancing Shoes. There was once a poor young orphan lad who worked as a servant to make ends meet. He was so clever and skilled that all the village boys were envious of him. They kept making fun of him, so he would feel bad about himself and seek out their company, but he didn't care about their chatter and was minding his own business. When they would gather up in the evenings to gossip, he pretended he didn't understand their jokes. His masters, on the other hand, were very happy with him. He was also favored by the village girls, who would nudge each other and look at him from underneath their eyebrows whenever they saw him, and they indeed had something to look at. He was handsome, with dark locks fluttering in the wind and framing his cheeks white as snow. His little mustache was barely sprouting, as if it was a shadow on his upper lip. And the eyes? His eyes were breaking all the girls' hearts. When he was taking the cows to pasture, the girls kept trying to chat him up. They had nicknamed him the Prince Charming of the village, but he ignored them and pretended he didn't understand what they wanted. In addition to being good-looking, everything he laid his hands on came out well. The cows he was taking to pasture were healthier than those that were looked after by the other servants. They gave more milk than other cows, because he took them places where grasses tasted better and gave more nourishment. Wherever he walked, you could tell, because even the grass was rejoicing. It turns out that he had been born at a good moment, and it had been prophesied that he had a bright future ahead of him. But he had no inkling about this and didn't know what his future held. Instead, he was humble and kept minding his own business. He didn't take issue with anyone's words or interfere with other people's belongings. And for this very thing, the other lads and servants were envious of him. One spring day, tired from having walked all over the place with the cows, he lay under the shadow of a large tree and went to sleep. He had already chosen that spot for such an eventuality. The tree under which he slept was located in a valley decorated with all sorts of little flowers, all in bloom. Somewhat further along there was a little stream which originated from the sides of a small hill. The stream was meandering through bushes and other weeds through which it had carved its path, and the gurgling of the water seemed to invite you to sleep. The tree under which he had fallen asleep was so tall and majestic it seemed to touch the sky. Little birds were nuzzling one another and building nests through its branches. Listening to their song would be enough to light the fire of love in anyone's heart. As soon as he put his head down in that spot, he fell asleep. He dreamt that he saw a beautiful fairy who told him to go to the court of the local king and seek his fortune. When he woke up, he wondered about the meaning of that dream. He wrestled with his thoughts all day long, but couldn't find any clarity. He didn't know that the star under which he had been born had come to serve him. The next day, while taking the cows to pasture, he made a detour by the tree under which he had slept the day before. He once again fell asleep by its root and dreamt the same dream. He was even more confused than the first time and spent the rest of the day wrestling with his own thoughts. On the third day, he went to the same tree, slept in the same spot, and had the same dream for the third time in a row. This time, the fairy threatened him with illness and all sorts of human evils if he doesn't go. He decided to do as the fairy had told him to do, and see what happens. He returned home with the cows, took them into the stable, and asked to see his master. "Master," he said, "I have decided to go out into the world and seek my fortune. I have been a servant for a long time, and I don't see this changing any time soon unless I make different life choices. I would like you to give me my dues." "But why are you leaving my service, lad?" the master said. "Are you not happy with the wages I am paying you? Do you not have enough food? Better stay with me, boy, and I will find you a good girl from the village with little dowry. I will also help you out as much as my heart will let me, so you find your place here like all the other villagers. Don't go off wandering into the world and risk becoming homeless and poor. I am happy in your service, master. I have enough food and everything else I need, but I simply feel the need to go out into the world, and I have made up my mind." When his master saw that there was no way to keep him there, he gave him the little he was due, and the boy set off into the world. As soon as he left the village, the lad went to the royal court, where he got hired to work in the king's garden. The gardener was delighted to take him on when he saw him so handsome and well mannered. He had previously received complaints from the king's daughters, who said that he kept hiring the ugliest and most disgusting young lads to be found on this earth. As handsome as the boy was, the clothes he had were of poor quality. The gardener gave him new clothes of good quality, fit for a royal gardener's helper, and he was handsome, and the clothes suited him well. Aside from the gardening, he was tasked with putting together 12 small bunches of flowers every day. He would deliver these bunches of flowers to the 12 princesses when they walked through the garden each morning. It had been prophesied that these princesses would not be able to marry until someone would break the curse that had been placed upon them and make one of them fall in love. As part of the curse, the fates had made them addicted to dancing. Every night the girls would dance so much that they would break one pair of dancing shoes made of white satin, yet nobody could figure out where they went to dance. The king had become worried about their icy heart, which wouldn't warm to any of the young suitors who had come to ask their hand in marriage. Besides, he was sick and tired of spending so much money on new dancing shoes every day. He sent out a message throughout his country and countries further afield that if any young man can tell him how his daughters managed to escape the palace and destroy a pair of dancing shoes every night, he can choose one of the princesses as his wife. The king kept all his daughters in the same room as his palace, behind 9 iron doors locked by 9 large locks. Yet nobody knew what they did to destroy their shoes, as nobody had seen them leave the palace at night. It turns out that unless anyone succeeded in breaking the curse, this is how the princesses were destined to spend the rest of their lives. As soon as the news of the king's offer spread, suitors started pouring in. Some were sons of rulers and kings, others sons of aristocrats, some even sons of less prominent aristocrats. Each of these suitors was tasked with standing guard at the princess's door for one night. The king was waiting with great trepidation each morning for someone to bring him good news, but instead, by the morning, the young lads who had stood guard could no longer be found. Nobody knew what happened to them. There was not even a single trace left of them. 11 young lads had so far disappeared, and this had given the other suitors pause for thought as they realized the danger they were putting themselves in by offering to stand guard. And so, one by one, they left the king's court and returned to their homes, leaving the king's daughters in God's care. Nobody wanted to lose their soul for a pretty face. The king was in shock. How had the young men vanished? He no longer dared invite anyone to try his luck, and started to worry that his daughters would grow into old spinsters. Meanwhile, the boy was fulfilling his job as a garden servant as best he could. The princesses were happy with the bunches of flowers he was giving them every morning, and the gardener was happy with his work. When the young lad was giving the bunches of flowers to the young ladies, he did not dare lift his eyes towards them, except for the youngest daughter. When it was her turn to receive the flowers, he didn't know why, but he kept blushing. His heart was racing so hard it felt as if it might jump out of his chest. The girl noticed this, but thought that the young lad is shy, and that is why he blushes while standing before her. This happened day after day, and he began to worry about having his heart broken. He knew that due to his low status as a garden servant, he could not hope to attract the attention of a beautiful princess, especially one who seemed so distant and ice-cold towards him. Yet he could not stop his heart from going wild every time he came close to her. He would have liked to try his luck and stand guard, but he had heard of what happened to those who had made the attempt before him. One day the youngest daughter confided in her sisters that she thought the servant who was giving them the flowers every morning was rather handsome. As soon as the eldest daughter heard such words come out of her youngest sister's mouth, she started making fun of her. How could she utter such nice words about a servant? Had she started giving away her heart to him? Meanwhile, the boy's heart was telling him to go before the king and ask to stand guard, but he knew his place. He was too scared to lose his job and be left with nothing. Also, he hadn't forgotten what happened to the lads who had vanished. Then there was a thought of troubled him most. If he were to be thrown out of the royal court, he wouldn't see the king's youngest daughter again. While giving her flowers every morning, however much he tried to temper his passion, he felt irresistibly attracted to her. No longer being able to touch her fingers every morning would be unbearable. Day and night he was wrestling with these thoughts and didn't know what to do about them. One night he fell asleep thinking about the king's youngest daughter. He once again dreamt of the fairy. "Go into the corner of the garden, the furthest towards the east," the fairy said. "There you will find two laurel tree seedlings, one of cherry color and the other of rose color. Next to them you will see a golden shovel, a golden watering can, and a silk towel. Take these seedlings and put them in two beautiful flower pots. Dig them into the golden shovel, water them with the golden watering can, and wipe them gently with the silk towel. Take care of them like the light in your eyes. Once they are fully grown, you will be able to ask them to fulfill any wish you have." After saying this, she vanished like a ghost, and the gardener's servant didn't even have time to thank her. He shook off his sleep and ran to the corner of the garden closest to the east. He was overjoyed when he found the things exactly as the fairy had told him. He wiped his eyes and pinched himself to make sure he wasn't still dreaming. After he reassured himself that he was awake, he took the laurel tree seedlings. He took care of them as the fairy had taught him, regularly digging them with the golden shovel, watering them with the golden watering can, and wiping them with the silk towel. The laurel trees were growing and getting stronger as if by miracle. Not long passed, and they became fully grown laurel trees, more beautiful than anyone had ever seen. One day he went to them and spoke as the fairy had taught him. Laurel tree," he said, "I have dug you with the golden shovel, I have watered you with the golden watering can, and I have wiped you with the silk towel. Give me the gift of becoming unseen by anybody whenever I want." He was surprised when at that very moment he saw a flower bud appearing and growing before his eyes. Within instants the flower bud became a flower so beautiful he felt compelled to take it in its perfume. He gently took hold of the flower, plucked it, and put it close to his chest. As soon as he did this, he saw his lower body become invisible, and felt certain that his upper body had become invisible too. In the evening, when the princesses went into their bedroom, he snuck past them without any of them seeing him. Then he waited to see what the girls would do. Instead of getting ready for bed, they started combing their hair and putting on expensive clothes. It was obvious they were preparing to go somewhere, so he decided to follow them to see where they went. Suddenly, the eldest said, "Are you ready, sisters?" "We're ready," the others said. Then the eldest tapped her foot and a trapdoor appeared. The girls, followed by the lad, lowered themselves through it and kept going down until they reached the garden surrounded by a wall made of copper. When they were about to enter, the eldest girl again tapped her foot, and the steel gates of the garden opened. As he followed the girls into the garden, the lad stepped on the youngest girl's dress by mistake. The girl, running quickly, didn't see anyone, but she remained suspicious. "Sisters, I am thinking someone may have followed me," she told her sisters. "I feel someone stepping on my dress." Her sisters looked everywhere but couldn't see anyone. "Don't be silly," they said. "Who could have followed us without us noticing? Your dress probably got caught in some thorns." The girl didn't say anything, but it was obvious she was still on her guard. The lad kept following them. They passed through a forest with silver leaves, through another forest with golden leaves, and another one with leaves made entirely of diamonds and other precious stones. The stones were shining so brightly they would make you blind. Eventually they reached a large lake. In the middle of the lake was a little hill. On top of this hill were some palaces more beautiful than anyone could imagine. The king's palaces were nothing compared to these, which shone brighter than the sun. They were so ingeniously crafted that when you went up inside them, you thought you were going down, and when you were going down, you thought you were going up. 12 tiny boats with rowers, clothed entirely in gold, were waiting at the edge of the lake. Each of the girls climbed into one of the boats, while the boy climbed into the youngest girl's boat. The boats were going in a line, each boat at an equal distance from the boat in front of it, but the youngest girl's boat soon started lagging behind. The rower was working as hard as he could to keep up with the others. He kept wondering why his boat was lagging behind, despite him putting in far more effort than on all the previous nights. As soon as they reached the other side of the pond, music started playing in the distance. It was the kind of music that made you want to dance and immerse yourself in its rhythm. The girls jumped out of the boats as fast as lightning, went inside the palace, and started to dance with some young lads. It turns out these were the young lads who had stood guard by the bedroom door and had vanished without trace. The boy kept following them and watched as the girls danced and started wearing out their shoes. The ballroom, which was decorated with gold and precious stones, was so large you could barely see where it ended. There were torches all around, as big as a person, that were burning like liquid gold. The walls were as white as milk and were shining brighter than the sun. They were decorated with streaks of gold as well as rubies and other gemstones that were flickering like fire. The boy found an observation spot in one of the corners and looked at all these marvels. He had plenty to look at, and as he danced while doing so, because there was no way to stand while that music played. Even the torches and the tables were jumping up and down, as if by magic. Organs, flutes, guitars, horns, lutes, and many other instruments were playing in harmony, making the most enticing music in the entire world. And the girls, they were dancing wildly, one dance after the other, wearing their shoes down more and more as the night went on. They danced until daybreak, when the music suddenly stopped playing. At that moment, a table laden with all kinds of delicious foods sprung up from the ground. The girls and their dance partners all sat down at that table, and they ate and feasted to their heart's desire. The boy kept his distance and watched all this from the corner of the room, even though his mouth watering. Eventually the girls finished eating and set off home, returning the same way they had come. The lad kept following them like a shadow. While they were passing through the forest with silver leaves, the lad broke off a tiny branch from one of the trees. Suddenly the entire forest started trembling, as if a storm had descended upon the trees, yet not a single leaf was moving. The girls jumped up. "What is that, sisters?" the youngest one said. "What can it be?" the eldest sister said. "Perhaps the little bird that has its nest on top of the church tower in our father's palaces has flown through the leaves, because only she can reach this place." The girls passed through the forest and reached their father's palace. They re-entered their bedroom using the trapdoor, which sealed itself shut behind them. The next morning, when the boy assembled the bunches of flowers for the king's daughters, he hid the little branch he had broken off inside the youngest girl's bunch. The princess was surprised when she looked through her bunch of flowers and found it. She couldn't figure out how he could have gotten hold of that little branch. The next evening, the girls spent the same way, and the lad used his invisibility powers again to follow them. This time he broke off a tiny twig from the trees with golden leaves. The eldest girl, again with soothing words, allayed the fear of her sisters when the rumble went through the forest after the boy had broken off the twig. The following morning, the lad put the twig among the flowers he gave to the youngest of the girls. When the girl received her bunch of flowers and found the twig hidden among them, she felt a burning iron go through her heart. She looked out for the right opportunity, and when it came, she went into the garden and pretended to go for a walk. She found the boy upon turning a corner and took him aside where they could not be seen. "Where did you get that twig you put into my bunch of flowers?" she asked him. "A place your highness knows all too well." "So you have followed us and know where we are going at night?" "Something like that." "How did you manage not to be seen by any of us?" "I hid. Take a bag of cold coins, and don't breathe a word about our nightly adventures. I am not selling my silence, your highness. If I hear you have as much as dropped one word about it, I will order to have your head cut off." Even though she uttered these harsh words, her heart was in another mood altogether. It seemed to her that his young man was getting more handsome by the day. The third night, when he followed them, he broke off a twig from the trees with diamond leaves. Again the forest rumbled, and the eldest sister once again dismissed the incident as insignificant. The youngest of the girls, however, without knowing why, felt a hidden joy creeping into her heart. The next day, when she found the diamond twig in her bunch of flowers, she looked at the boy from underneath her eyelashes and thought that he looked more handsome than the sons of rulers and kings. The young man snuck a peek in her direction as well, and as their eyes met, he saw her lose her icy cold look for a moment. He pretended he didn't understand what was happening and went about his business. Yet the eldest of the girls caught them talking and started making fun of her younger sister. The youngest girl did not say anything and swallowed her shame. She couldn't understand how the young man had managed to discover their secret, and she started to think that this lad had some sort of magic powers. He seemed to know things even wizards didn't know. And then his majestic stance, his handsome and kind face, did not fit his low status as a servant. On top of being handsome, he had a sort of come-hither look about him that attracted her. After the girls finished their walk through the garden, the youngest of the girls told them that the garden servant knew everything they did at night. The girls drew up a plan to make him lose his heart and his senses, as they had done with the other young lads. But the lad guessed they were about to talk about him, so he used his invisibility powers to sneak in behind them and listen to their plans. Once he heard everything he needed to know, he went to his laurel trees and said to the rose-colored one, Laurel tree, I have dug you with a golden shovel, have watered you with a golden watering can, and dried you with a silk towel. Give me as much learning and money as a king's son." As before, a flower bud sprouted, grew, and a wonderful flower blossomed right before his eyes. He took the flower and put it close to his chest. Immediately the sunburns disappeared from his face, leaving it clean and light as if he had just been born. He also felt something going on in his brain, something he couldn't understand, but he noticed he had started thinking differently from before. His mind had become sharper. And he also noticed that his clothes had completely transformed. He was now wearing the kind of expensive clothes that sons of kings wore. Then he went to the king and asked to stand guard at the girl's bedroom door that night. The king felt sorry for his youth and advised him to go about his own business instead of seeking his own death. But the young man insisted, and in the end the king agreed. The king didn't even suspect this was the garden servant. That is how much he had changed. When he showed him to the girls, and the king told him that what he wanted, they didn't recognize him either. Only the youngest one recognized him and started feeling love in her heart. The following night, when they set off to their dance, they took him with them. He knew what to expect, but didn't reveal anything about what he knew. They reached the enchanted palace, danced until daybreak, and sat down to eat. While they were eating, he was offered a drink. This was the same drink that had been offered to all the young lads before him, who had mysteriously vanished and were now living inside the enchanted palace. The drink was meant to make the person who drank it lose their mind and vanish from the daytime world. He took the drink in his hand and looked at the youngest of the girls with tears in his eyes, full of the love that was consuming him. "I am prepared to drink this for you," he said, "if you want me to. But I am hoping that your heart is not so icy as to allow this to happen." "I no longer have an icy heart," she said. "The fire of your love has thawed the ice. Don't drink. I'd rather be the wife of a gardener's servant for the rest of my life." Everyone heard her words, and he threw the drink behind him. At that moment the spell broke, and the enchanted palace vanished, as if it had never existed. They all found themselves in the king's palace. When the king saw them, he was thunderstruck. The lad, his former gardener's servant, told them everything he had seen while accompanying the princesses, and explained to the king the reason why his daughters had been wearing out their dancing shoes night after night. The king allowed the youngest of the girls to marry the young handsome lad. Then the other girls also came before him with one of the lads that had vanished, and they had come back to their senses once the spell had been broken. The king was delighted that his daughters no longer had an icy heart, and allowed each of them to set up their own home. There was great rejoicing as many weddings were celebrated one after the other. Before they married, the youngest girls asked her fiancé what magic he had used to discover the girl's secret. He told her about the 2 laurel trees. She decided to cut them down and turn them to ashes so they could have a normal life together, devoid of magic spells. Then they married and lived a happy life, the way a happy life is lived in this world of ours, until they got worn down by deep old age, and I jumped into a saddle and told you the story thus. Translator's note: The Mystery of the Dancing Shoes. The story's original title was Cele dos Prezece Fete de Imparat, which translates as The King's 12 Daughters. I changed it to The Mystery of the Dancing Shoes because I wanted to highlight the mystery that is the heart of the story. If you are a creative person looking for inspiration, the story has so much to offer: a complex love story, an interesting character arc, an intoxicating nighttime ritual. Of all the elements of the story, I found the nighttime dancing the most intriguing. Uncontrolled dancing offers a powerful metaphor for addiction, one that is found in many other fantasy stories. I was reminded of Hans Christian Andersen's story, The Red Shoes, as well as the nighttime dancing ritual in Susanna Clarke's novel, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. For those in the grips of such an addiction, or for those who have loved ones in this situation, the mystery of the dancing shoes offers a powerful healing balm. It shows a way to break the addiction curse through the power of love. The girl's decision to destroy the laurel trees that had provided her husband with the magical help is interesting and worth mentioning. Choosing the groundedness of reality over the intoxicating world of magic is a theme that shows up in many of the stories collected by Petre Ispirescu. For example, you can find this theme expressed in Youth Everlasting, the headline story in Youth Everlasting and other Romanian fairy tales, as well as in The Magic Wolf, the final story in this book. We can only speculate about the reason for the popularity of this theme in Romanian folklore. My interpretation is that these stories were told by people living within the harsh realities of agrarian life. While the magic in the stories provided them with much-needed entertainment, the ability to accept the limitations of physical reality was essential to their way of life. By contrast, in Western, more recent fantasy stories such as Lude in the Mist by Hope Mirrlees and Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman, The characters were so enchanted by their discovery of magic that they chose to abandon their previous mundane existence. Grauchanu. Once upon a time there was a king who was very upset because some Zmei, fearsome human-like creatures with magic powers, had stolen the sun and the moon from the sky. He therefore sent messengers through all the corners of his kingdom to let everyone know that whichever hero will succeed in taking the sun and moon back from the Zmei, that hero will receive half his kingdom and be allowed to marry his daughter. However, anyone who will try but fail will be put to death. Many young men got themselves into trouble assuming that they could fulfill this task, but when it came to completing it, they went from corner to corner and did not know where to start and where to finish because not all flies make honey. That's that's the second story to have that. Hmm. The king, however, kept his word, and the would-be heroes were put to death. During that time, there was a famous hero called Grau, sorry, Grau, Grauchanu. Hearing as everyone else of the royal promise, he thought about it, then changed his mind, and then changed his mind once more. Eventually, he decided to go for it, putting his faith in God's help and his own bravery. He set off to the royal court to put himself forward, yet a small part of him was undecided whether to take on this difficult mission. On his way, he came across two men whom the king's servants were taking away to be put to death for deserting the king's army during a battle. They were terrified, the poor men, but Grau Chanu soothed them with words so sweet that they started to take heart. Based on this happening, our hero decided on a plan of action. I will take on these men's cause, he said to himself. If I succeed in persuading the king to withdraw the death warrant against these men, I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. I will dare to take on this other task too. If not, I will take this on as an omen and go back home. It is never a bad thing to attempt something. And while thinking in this way, he arrived at the royal court. When he came before the king, he put so much craft into his talk, and spoke so well that the king decided that he had unfairly sentenced the two men. He took Grau Chanu's advice that these men should be of better use as royal servants, and that he would be seen in a better light for showing mercy towards his people. The men could barely contain their happiness when they heard they had been given a reprieve. They thanked Grau Chanu from the bottom of their hearts and promised that for the rest of their lives they will pray for his continued success. Taking this as a good omen, sorry. Grau Chanu went before the king for the second time. Almighty King, he said, you may live many years on this enlightened throne of your kingdom. Many heroes have promised your highness to take the sun and moon back from the Zmei, who have stolen them from the sky. I know these heroes have been put to death because they have not been able to fulfill this promise they have made towards your highness. I too, Almighty King, would like to go in search of the thieving Zmei and try my luck. Maybe God might enable me to punish those cursed Zmei for their thoughtless daring, but I ask that you be merciful and helpful towards me. Sorry. My dear Grau, my dear Grau Chonu, the king said, I cannot change what I have previously decided because I have to be fair. My commands will be the same for my entire kingdom. Sorry. For my entire kingdom. For me, favoritism is unlawful. Saying the king's determination in the various words. Grau Chanu said, Let it be so, Almighty King. I will not give up until I bring to good end the task I am taking upon myself of my own free will. They agree. agreed, and Grau. I feel like I'm going to be stumbling over this name every time. They agreed, and Grauchanu made all the preparations needed so he would come out of this endeavor safe and sound. He took his brother with him, and they went, and kept going until they reached the goldsmith of the earth's dwelling. The goldsmith of the earth was Grau Grauchanu's blood brother. He was the most skilled goldsmith across the entire earth, in addition to having magic powers. For 3 days and 3 nights, Grauchanu and the goldsmith drew up a plan of action. After that, I don't know why it's so hard for me to do that. Like, just... Ooh, I know. Grau... For 3 days and 3 nights, Grauchanu and the goldsmith drew up a plan of action. After that, Grauchanu and his brother went on their way. As soon as Grauchanu, the goldsmith, began making the face of Grauchanu out of metal. Then he asked his apprentices to keep it in the fire continuously day and night. Meanwhile, Grauchanu and his brother walked a long way and even longer until they reached a crossroads. Here they stopped, sat on the grass, and had a picnic using their food leftovers. They decided to each take one of the 2 paths stretching out before them to maximize their chances of finding the Zmei. Before going their separate ways, they tore a headscarf in 2, each taking 1 half. As long as the headscarf will look worn along the edges, they said, there is hope to meet one another safe and sound. But if the headscarf gets torn in the middle, the other one has died. They also stuck a knife in the ground and said, the one who is first to return to this spot and finds the knife rusted shouldn't spend time waiting for the other because he has died. Then they parted after hugging and crying like babies. Grauchanu went towards the right and his brother went towards the left. Grauchanu's brother walked for a long time without finding anything. He therefore returned to the spot where they had parted, and finding the knife in good condition, he started waiting for his brother. Meanwhile, Grauchanu went and kept going along a path which ended right in front of the houses of the Zmei, around where the devil weans his children. Upon reaching this spot, Grauchanu did 3 somersaults and turned into a pigeon as the goldsmith of the earth had taught him to do. As a pigeon, Grauchanu flew up to a tree branch where he was right in front of the houses of the Zmei. Upon seeing the pigeon, the eldest daughter came out into the yard to take a closer look. She called out to her mother and younger sister to come and see the miracle, because birds did not fly as far as their dwelling place. That pigeon does not look like a good omen, the youngest daughter said. The eyes do not look like those of a bird, but rather they look like the eyes of Grauchanu the Golden. Our time may be drawing to a close. From here on, may God have mercy on us. It seems the Zmei had already heard of Grauchanu's bravery. Then the 3 Zmei women went back inside and started devising a plan of defense. Grauchanu made 3 somersaults and turned into a fly so he could make his way undetected into the house of the Zmei. There he hid into the crack of one of the beams that were holding up the roof and listened to their plans. After he heard everything they said, he left the house, transformed back into a human, and set off towards the green forest. Along the way, he hid underneath a bridge. From what he had heard while eavesdropping on the three Zmel women, he knew that the male Zmei had gone hunting in the green forest. One of them was due to return towards evening, another was due back towards midnight, and the head of the clan towards morning, while Graal Chanu was waiting. The youngest Zmel was on his way back. As the Zmel's horse was about to go over the bridge, he started snorting and jumping backwards 7 steps. "May the wolves devour this horse's flesh," the Zmel shouted. "I don't fear anything in this world other than sorry. Other than Graal Chanu the Golden. But even him I could slay with one strike. Come hither, brave Zmel," Graal Chanu said, as he came out from under the bridge. "Let us cut ourselves in swords or fight each other chest to chest." "Let us fight each other chest to chest, because that's fairer," the Zmel said. They approached one another and started fighting. The Zmel grabbed Graal Chanu and struck him into the earth right up to his knees, but Graal Chanu grabbed the Zmel and stuck him into the earth up to his neck, then cut off his head. After he threw the Zmel's corpse and that of his horse underneath the bridge, he got some rest. In the middle of the night, the elder brother was about to cross the same bridge when his horse jumped 17 steps backwards. The Zmel said the same words as his brother had done, and Graal Chanu answered him the same way. Coming out from under the bridge, he started fighting this Zmel as well. The Zmel grabbed Graal Chanu and pushed him into the earth right up to the chest. But oh gosh. But Graal Chanu, jumping out quickly, grabbed the Zmel, pushed him to the ground into the earth right up to the neck, and beheaded him with his sword, throwing away the Zmel's corpse and that of his horse under the bridge. Just as he had done with his younger brother, he once again had a rest. Towards dawn came the big Zmel, the father-in-law of the 2 Zmei Graal Chanu had already killed. The big Zmel was in a bad mood, and his mood became even worse when he reached the bridge. His horse jumped 77 steps backwards. The Zmel was furious and roared, "May the wolves devour the flesh of my horse. There is nobody I fear on this earth other than Graal Chanu the Golden, and that one as well I could do away with easily." Graal Chanu came out from under the bridge and said, "Well then, brave Zmel, come and do so. We can cut each other in swords, hit each other with spears, or fight one another chest to chest." They started fighting. They fought using swords until their swords broke. They fought using spears until their spears broke. They started fighting chest to chest. They were fighting so hard the earth was shaking underneath them. The Zmel squeezed Graal Chanu once, but Graal Chanu, anticipating what Zmel was about to do, swelled himself up and tensed his veins and did not suffer any pain. Then Graal Chanu squeezed the Zmel as well, when the Zmel wasn't expecting it, and the Zmel's bones cracked. No one had ever seen a fight such as this one, and they fought and fought until the afternoon, when they got tired. A raven blew above their head, watching their fight. "Bring me a beak full of water," the Zmel said to the raven, "and I will feed you a young man's corpse along with his horses." "Bring me a beak full of water," Graal Chanu said, "and I will feed you 3 Zmel corpses along with those of their horses." So the raven brought Graal Chanu a beak full of water and quenched his thirst. When his forces replenished, Graal Chanu heaved the Zmel up in the air and then threw him to the ground. He pushed him down to his neck, put his foot in the Zmel's head, and held him like this. "Tell me, cursed Zmel," he said, "where have you hidden the sun and the moon, because there is no escape for you?" The Zmel was stalling, telling him all sorts, but Graal Chanu said, "Tell me, or if not, I will still find them, and I will cut off your head as well." The Zmel, still hoping to escape with his life as he tells him, said, "I keep them locked up in the green forest inside a cabin. The key is my right hand pinky." The key is my right hand pinky." As soon as Growl Chanu heard this, he beheaded the Zmo and cut off the pinky of the Zmo's right hand. He gave all the corpses to the raven, as he had promised, then went to the cabin in the green forest, opened the door using the Zmo's pinky, and found the sun and the moon. He took the sun into his right hand and the moon into his left, threw them into the sky, and rejoiced at the light they cast upon the earth. Upon seeing the sun and the moon back in the sky, the people rejoiced and praised God for having given Growl Chanu the strength to win against this May. As for Growl As for Growl Chanu, he set off on his way back to the king, happy that he had brought his task to a good end. He found his brother back at the crossroads, and they hugged. They bought 2 horses that could run as fast as the wind and set off back to the king. Along the way, they came upon a tree full of golden pears. Growl Chanu's brother said that it would be good if they could rest a little under the shadow of this pear tree to give the horses a chance to catch their breath. He also wanted to pick a few pears to allay their hunger. Growl Chanu had heard what the Zmo women had in store and agreed to take a rest. However, he did not let his brother pick any of the pears, but said he will pick them himself. Then he took out a sword and cut off the roots of the pear tree. What do you think? Blood and venom started flowing from the pear tree, and they could hear a voice saying, "You have killed me, Growl Chanu, the way you have killed my husband," and nothing remained of that pear tree other than the dust and cinders. Growl Chanu's brother was stunned, not knowing what to make of this. The 2 brothers continued their journey until they reached a beautiful garden with flowers and butterflies and a tiny stream with clear, cool water. "Let's stop here for a little while," Growl Chanu's brother said, "to rest our horses while we drink some water and pick some flowers." "Let's do so, brother," Growl Chanu said. "If this garden has been planted by human hands, this stream has been left here by God." Then taking out his sword, he hit at the root of a flower that was particularly beautiful. He also stabbed into the bottom of the stream. But instead of water, thick, dark blood started bubbling up to the surface as well as from the flower's root, and the air became filled with a disgusting smell. Only dust was left of the eldest Smo daughter, who had transformed into the garden in the spring to poison Growl Chanu and kill him. Having escaped this terrible trap, they mounted their horses and went on their way, riding as fast as the wind. Then, what do you think? The Zmo matriarch had started following them with one jaw touching the sky and the other touching the ground, intending to swallow Growl Chanu. And she had reason to be furious because he had killed her entire family. "Look behind you, brother," Growl Chanu said, "and tell me what you see." "I see a cloud coming after us like a tornado," his brother said. They spurred on their horses, and Growl Chanu once again asked his brother to look behind him. The brother said that the cloud is approaching like a flame, so they spurred on their horses once more until they reached the goldsmith of the earth's dwelling. There, as soon as they dismounted, they locked themselves in the smithy, where the old Zmo woman could not enter. If she had reached them, she would have annihilated them. Not even a little bone would have remained. Now, however, she could not do anything against them, so she turned to trickery. She asked Growl Chanu to make a hole in the wall so she could at least see his face. Growl Chanu pretended to take pity on her and made a hole in the wall, but the goldsmith of the earth was waiting with the metal cast he had made of Growl Chanu's face, which had been burning in the fire for so long that sparks were flying from it. When the Zmo woman put her mouth at the crack of the wall to suck Growl Chanu in, the goldsmith of the earth shoved the fiery metal cast into her throat. She swallowed it and died on the spot. Her corpse soon transformed itself into a mountain made of metal. The goldsmith of the earth opened the door of the smithy, went outside, and then celebrated their victory for 3 days and 3 nights. The goldsmith of the earth was particularly happy about the mountain made of metal and asked his apprentices to turn it into a carriage and 3 horses for Growl Chanu. After that was done, the goldsmith of the earth breathed life into the metal horses. Saying goodbye to the goldsmith of the earth, Growl Chanu got into his carriage with his brother and left towards the king to receive his reward. On their way, they reached a crossroads where they stopped and rested. Then Growl Chanu unharnessed one of the horses from the carriage and gave it to his brother to tell the king that Growl Chanu was on his way, having completed his task. He stayed somewhat behind, advancing at a slow pace and recovering his strength. In anticipation of his meeting with the king, on his way he passed by a lame devil who was holding up travelers to give them grief. The devil was too scared to confront Raoul Chanu directly, but he didn't want to leave him untouched by devilish nastiness. He therefore took out the nail from the head of his back axis and threw it a long way behind the carriage. "Hey there, young man," the devil said to Raoul Chanu, "you have lost your nail. Go and find it." Raoul Chanu jumped out of the carriage but left his sword there by mistake. And while he was looking for the nail, the devil stole his sword. Then, going to the side of the road, he made 3 somersaults and turned into a large rock. Raoul Chanu put the nail back at the head of the axis, got in the carriage, and went on his way without realizing that his sword was missing. One of the king's traitorous advisers had promised his offspring to the devil if he will help him marry the king's daughter. The devil knew that without his sword, Raoul Chanu was unrecognizable, so he told the traitorous adviser to go before the king and ask for his daughter's hand in marriage, saying that it was he who had retrieved the sun and the moon from this maid. The king believed him because he trusted his adviser and could see the sun and the moon back in the sky. He therefore started to get things organized for the wedding. While everyone was getting ready for the royal wedding, Raoul Chanu's brother arrived with the news that that with the news that Raoul Chanu was on his way. The adviser, as soon as he heard, went to the king and said that the new arrival is a fraud and must be put behind bars. The king listened to him, and Raoul Chanu's brother was put into prison. Then the adviser spent from dawn till dusk every day hurrying everyone so the wedding could take place quicker. He thought that once he gets married to the king's daughter, the matter will be over, and Raoul Chanu's arrival will not change things. The king, however, did not like his adviser's attempt to rush things and was stalling the preparations. Not long passed, and Raoul Chanu's arrived and went before the king, saying he had completed the task. But as he did not have his sword, the king did not recognize him. That's when Raoul Chanu realized that his sword was missing. He remembered that he only saw the rock by the side of the road after he had found the nail and was returning to the carriage with it, and understood that he had been tricked. "Enlightened king," he said, "everyone speaks of your fairness. Please let me have some justice. You have waited a long time for this wedding to take place. Please wait only for a little while longer, and you will see the truth reveal itself before your eyes." The king agreed to wait until Raoul Chanu returns, having started to wonder whether his adviser had been telling the truth. Raoul Chanu got back in his carriage and returned on his way until he reached the rock by the side of the road where the devil had taken out the nail from his carriage. "Unworthy creature," he said, "give me the sword you have stolen from me, because if not, I will turn you to dust." The rock did not budge. Raoul Chanu made 3 somersaults and turned himself into a mace made entirely of lead. He started hitting the rock so hard the earth was shaking. Every time he would hit, a piece would fly out of the rock, and he kept hitting until he smashed the rock's top to pieces. Then suddenly the rock started shaking and asking for forgiveness. Yet the mace only started hitting harder, and it kept hitting until the rock turned to dust. When nothing remained of the rock, Raoul Chanu searched among the dust and found his sword. He took it, and without resting a single moment, he returned before the king. "I am ready, almighty king," he said, "to show whoever is asking what Raoul Chanu can do. Let that shameless adviser come who had tried to deceive you." The king called for the adviser to be brought in. The latter, when he saw Raoul Chanu with his sword and his brow furrowed, started trembling and asking for forgiveness, revealing how the devil had tempted him into deceiving the king. After Raoul Chanu intervened on his behalf, the adviser received forgiveness from the king, but was ordered to leave the kingdom. Raoul Chanu's brother was released from prison, and the royal wedding was arranged, which was joyful and lasted 3 whole weeks. And I got into a saddle and told you the story thus. Translator's note. Raoul Chanu. In translating and adapting this story, I have made one change that is worth mentioning, which was to fix a glaring plot hole relating to Raoul Chanu's sword. In the original version, the devil gives the impostor the sword he had stolen from Raoul Chanu, which the impostor uses to persuade the king of his victory over this maid. However, Chanu then goes back to the devil, transformed into a stone, and retrieves his sword from the devil. This is problematic because it means the sword was in two places at once, with the devil and with the impostor hero. To remedy this problem, in my version, the devil does not hand the sword over to the impostor hero, but simply advises him to claim that he was the one to free the sun and the moon from the hands of this May. I made the choice that the devil will be the one who held on to the sword, so Grau Chanu could retrieve it from him. As Grau Chanu cannot be recognized without a sword, and as the king is likely to trust his own adviser, it was possible that the impostor could persuade the king even without having the sword. I would also like to provide an explanation on what a Zmo is. The Zmo, plural Zme, is a monster-like creature that appears in many Romanian fairy tales, legends, and myths. Because the Zmo appears so often in these stories, this creature is never described, presumably because the people listening to the tales had a common understanding of what a Zmo looks like. However, it is worth pointing out that there is no formal consensus over what a Zmo looks like. This lack of clear description is perhaps why the Zmo is so popular in Romanian fairy tales. Its monster-like features can easily be adapted by the storyteller to take the shape of whatever is needed by the narrative. Some depictions show the Zmo as more human-like, while in others the Zmo seems to have a stronger resemblance to dragons. If you are curious, I suggest you type the word into Google Images and enjoy the many different representations you will find. I decided to add a short yet somewhat vague description of the Zmo, fearsome human-like creatures with magic powers, in my translated version. My intention was to indicate to the reader that the word refers to a fantastic creature that is part of Romanian folklore, while at the same time not limiting the reader's imagination to my own mental image of a Zmo. The Zmo shares many human features, based on what happens in the stories. We can tell that the Zmo has arms and legs as well as the ability to ride a horse and use weapons. On the other hand, the Zmo is often described as having a tail and being able to blow fire through their mouth, as well as being bigger and stronger than humans. In some stories, such as in the case of Grau Chanu, the Zmo also has magic powers, such as being able to shapeshift, often as part of their plan to trap and defeat the hero. In most cases, the Zmo is an evil, cunning creature that kidnaps a beautiful maiden and keeps her prisoner until she is rescued by the hero. In the case of Grau Chanu, the beautiful maiden is replaced by the sun and the moon. The Zmo is often helped by his mother, who usually has a whole range of magic powers, and chases after the hero or attempts to outwit him once her son has been defeated. In Grau Chanu, there are 3 male and 3 female Zme, so there is a more complex dynamic, but the eldest of the Zmo women serves the same function as the ultimate avenger. Grau Chanu includes many beloved tropes: stealing something bright and beautiful that has to be retrieved by the hero, the chase, and the many obstacles the hero has to overcome in order to succeed. There is also the attempt by the mother of the Zmo to kill the hero through blowing fire on him, which seems to be the undoing of many of the Zmo mothers. If you decide to read more of my translated stories of Petre Ispirescu's collection, you will no doubt see some of these Zmo-related tropes in action in a variety of different stories. King Eliodor. There was once upon a time a king who had reached old age and did not have an heir. He was longing to have a son of his own, but in vain. Eventually luck smiled upon him, and he had a charming little boy, one which you will see and not forget. The king called him Eliodor. When it was time for the boy to get baptized, he called the east, the west, the north, and the south, so all would share in his joy. The feast to celebrate the boy's baptism lasted for 3 days and 3 nights, and the guests rejoiced so much they remembered it until their dying days. While growing up, the boy was becoming cleverer and more skilled by the day. Not long passed, and the king was close to death. "Daddy's dearest," he told his son just before dying, "I am about to take my last breath. I can see you will become a great man, and even dead my bones will rejoice in their grave over your achievements. I don't have anything to teach you about taking over the reins of this kingdom, because with your skill I know you'll do well. One thing I will tell you, do not be tempted to hunt on that mountain over there. If you do, great sorrow will fall upon your head. That mountain is the property of half a man riding half a lame rose." I'll try to read that sentence again. That mountain is... That mountain is the property of half a man riding half a lame rabbit. And whoever steps on his property does not escape unpunished. After the king said this, he opened his mouth 3 times and his soul flew away. His family and his people grieved for him a long time. In the end, they had to bury him, and Heliodor became the new king. Despite his youth, Heliodor put the matters of the kingdom in order to like a grown man. Everybody was happy with the way he was ruling, and the people were proud of their new king. In his spare time, Heliodor liked to go hunting. He remembered what his father had told him and was following his word religiously. But one day, without knowing how, he mindlessly set a foot onto the land of the ugly man. He had barely taken 10 steps to return his own lands when he found himself face to face with him. He wasn't scared about having stepped on the man's land, but he was annoyed that he had gone against his father's dying words. "All the lawless who step on my land become my slaves," the man said to him. "First of all, you should know," Heliodor responded, "that I did it out of mindlessness and without intention. I do not harbor any negative thoughts against you." "I thought you'd be different," the ugly man said, "but I see that you intend to ask forgiveness from me, like all the other cowards. On the contrary, God forbid, I have told you the naked truth. If you want a fight, choose your weapon. We can cut each other with swords, hit each other with a mace, or we can fight with our bare hands. None of these will do. There is no other way to escape punishment than to bring me the daughter of the Green King so I can marry her." Heliodor attempted to avoid the challenge. He said that the affairs of his kingdom do not permit him to take such a long trip, nor does he have a guide to find his way to the Green King. He tried one argument after another, but in vain. The ugly man didn't care about any of these things. He kept on and on that he wanted Heliodor to bring him the daughter of the Green King. Otherwise, Heliodor will receive the punishment dished out to thieves for mistreating other people's rights. Heliodor knew he was guilty, even though it had been unintentional. He knew he had done wrong in stepping on the ugly man's property. He also knew that there is no point to argue with the man of the devil. In the end, he promised to fulfill the task that he had been asked to do. Half a man riding half a lame rabbit knew that. I'll try that again. Half a man riding half a lame rabbit knew that because Heliodor had promised he would keep his word, because he was that sort of man. Go with God, he told Heliodor, and may you return having fulfilled the task. Heliodor set off on his quest. On his way, while thinking how best to fulfill the task, he found himself at the edges of a swamp. He saw a pike fighting for her life on dry land and was about to catch the pike to make himself something to eat. "Don't kill me, King Heliodor," the pike said. "Better put thee back into the water, and I will come to your help when you'll need it." Heliodor put her back in the water. "Take this scale," the pike said. "When you'll think of me, I will come to your aid." Heliodor went on his way, dazed by all that had happened to him that day. Oh, this is one of those. There's another fairy tale like this. I don't know what it's called. It's similar. Like one of those fairy tales where several animals give various things to help somebody. Okay. Heliodor went on his way, dazed by all that had happened to him that day. Suddenly he came across a raven. that had a broken wing. Just when he was about to catch the raven for his dinner, the raven spoke. "Instead of burdening your soul with my death," the raven said, "better bandage up my wing, and I will do much good to you one day." Eleodor agreed and bandaged the raven's wing. When he was about to go, the raven said, "Take this feather, brave lad, and when you think of me, I will come to your aid." Eleodor took the feather and went on his way. He had just barely taken a few steps when he came across a gadfly. Just as he was preparing to crush it with his foot, the gadfly spoke. "Spare my life, King Eleodor," the gadfly said, "and I will save your life one day. Take this little bit of fluff from my wing, and when you think of me, I will come to your aid." Hearing the gadfly speak, Eleodor lifted his foot and took the gadfly's bit of fluff. After walking for I don't know how many days, he reached the palace of the Green King. Eleodor went to the gate and waited for someone to come and ask him what he was looking for. He waited for one day, then a second day. On the third day, the Green King called his servants and gave them a telling off to be remembered. "Why is it," he said, "that someone has been standing by the gate for 3 days? No one has gone out to find out what he wants. Is this what I am paying you for?" The servants were floundering and did not know what to say. In the end, they opened the gate and brought Eleodor before the king. "What is it you want, young lad?" asked the king. "Great King," Eleodor answered, "I have been sent to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage." "Fine, my lad, but first we must make an agreement, because this is the custom in my kingdom. You are allowed to hide wherever you may want every day for 3 consecutive days. If my daughter finds you each time you hide, your head will be cut off and will be put on the stilt that has remained for 100 without a head. If you manage to remain hidden from her even once during these 3 days, you can take her from me with my blessing." "I trust that God will not let me die," Eleodor said. "We can give the stilt something other than a human head. I am happy to enter into this agreement. Is that so?" "It is." One moment. I've got to go. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I didn't know where I placed it for a moment. Okay. Is that so? It is. They made the agreement legally binding. As soon as the agreement was made, Eleodor started thinking and rethinking how best to hide for the Green King's daughter. All while thinking and planning, he remembered the pike. He took out the scale, looked at it, and thought of its owner. Suddenly the pike was by his side. "What is it you want, King Eleodor?" The boy told the pike about his predicament and asked for help. "Don't worry, leave it to me," said the pike. She gave one swish of her tail and transformed Eleodor into a little fish, which she hid at the bottom of the sea among the other little fish. When the girl woke up, she looked through a magic looking-glass, which she had used to find all her suitors up until this point, but she could not see him. The girl was delighted to finally come across a young man who was presenting her with a challenge. While the others who had come to ask for her hand had hidden in cellars behind houses or behind a stack of hay, Eleodor had hidden himself in such a way that the girl started to worry she might get beaten at her own game. But just then she got the idea to point her looking-glass at the sea, and she soon found him, hiding among the little fish. "Get out of there, you thief," she told him, laughing. "From a normal-sized human being, you have transformed yourself into a little fish and have hidden at the bottom of the sea." He didn't have a choice and had to come out. She told the king, "I think, father, that with this lad I have found my match. He is handsome and cute too, and not dumb like the others. He looks like he's of a special kind. We shall see," the king said. The next day Eleodor thought of the raven, who immediately appeared before him. "What do you want, master?" the raven asked. Eleodor told him about his predicament and asked the raven for help. The raven agreed. With a swish of his wing, the raven transformed Eleodor into a raven chick and hid him in a raven's nest that had been swept up into the air by a gale of wind. As soon as the girl woke up, she looked through her looking glass but couldn't find him anywhere. She searched for him all over the earth, but he wasn't there. She searched for him through the seas and oceans. He wasn't there either. The girl was dumbfounded. Then she suddenly had an idea, and used her looking glass to search the skies. She found him in the heights of the skies among the other raven chicks, and wagged her finger at him. "Come back down, you thief," she said. "You're not a raven chick, but I appreciate the irony of trying to escape by ascending to heaven." Eleodor did not have a choice and came back down to earth. The king started to marvel at Eleodor's cleverness, and wondered whether his daughter may indeed have found her match. "Let's see where he will hide this time," the king said. On the third day, early in the morning, Eleodor thought of the gadfly. She came as soon as he held her wing fluff. After Eleodor told her why he needed help, the gadfly said, "Leave it to me, I promise you won't be able to find you." She transformed him into a louse and hid him in the girl's hair. When the girl woke up and took her looking glass, she searched for him all day long but could not find him. She was at her wits' end. She used her looking glass to search through the seas, all over the earth, and all through the whole of the sky, and she couldn't find him anywhere. Towards evening, tired of so much searching, she admitted defeat. "Show yourself. I can sense that you are close by, but I cannot see you. You have beaten me. I will be yours." Once he heard that she had admitted defeat, Eleodor climbed down from her hair and showed himself. The king had no option but to allow Eleodor to take the girl with him. They left in style, with crowds accompanying them right up to the edges of the kingdom. On the way, they stopped for a rest. After they ate this and that, Eleodor put his head in the girl's lap and fell asleep. The king's daughter, looking at him, could not get over how handsome he was. Her heart gave a jolt, and she kissed him. Eleodor woke up with a start and jumped several feet away from her, horrified. "You cannot kiss me. It is forbidden," he said. "I have not taken you for myself, but for the one who has sent me." "Why did you not tell me?" she said. "I would have known what to do, but the time is not yet lost." They set off and arrived on the lands of half a man riding a half lame rabbit. "I have accomplished the task," Eleodor said, "and I will now take my leave." The girl, when she saw half a man riding half a lame rabbit, shook with disgust. The horrible man stood close to the girl and started flattering her, trying to sweeten her up. "Disappear from my sight, devil," the girl told him, "because I will send you to your mother, Hell, which has spilt you upon this earth." The horrible man was lying on his belly, pleading with the girl to take him as a husband, but in vain. He could not even come near her, because she would hold him away with her eyes. She did not call him other than devil and disgustingness. "Disappear, unclean one, from the face of the earth, so the world can get rid of the plague like you." He kept trying for a while, but when he saw how strongly she was resisting his advances, he burst from anger, having been made a laughingstock by a woman. Eleodor married the girl. They stretched out on his hands to include those of half a man riding half a lame rabbit, and took his wife back to his own kingdom. When the crowd saw him returning safely, they were overcome with joy. They were also delighted when they met his wife, who was so beautiful that she made even the stars smile. The young couple reigned and lived happily until the day they died, and I got into a saddle and told you the story thus. Translator's note: King Eleodor. The girl in this fairy tale is one of the most delightful female heroines I have encountered throughout Petre Ispirescu's collection. She is in charge of her destiny. She has magic powers, and she knows what she wants. Above all, she is mischievous and loves a challenge, despite the deadly danger that Eleodor is in. If he fails at his task, her responses to his attempts lighten the mood. This heroine's agency stands in stark contrast to contrast to Grauchanu's bride in the previous story, who does not even feature as a character and seems to be a pawn in the game played by the various male characters. Nevertheless, I decided to make one change in my translated version of King Eleodor that pertains to the girl. In the original version, when she kisses Eleodor and he wakes up, he slaps her. I decided to replace the slap with him jumping out of his slumber. It is clear from the way his slap is described in the original version that slapping her for kissing him is perceived as noble, a sign of his integrity. He slaps her because he wants to keep his word to half a man riding half a lame rabbit, and does not want to fall into temptation. However, from our 21st century perspective, slapping a woman is a horrifying act of violence and would not provide the foundation for a blossoming romance. Interestingly, given the Carol's character, it is unlikely that such an emancipated and strong woman would have tolerated being slapped, regardless of reasons. As such, I feel the change I have made is more in keeping with her character and therefore is an improvement on the original version of the story. The Magic Wolf. There was once a king and a queen who had 3 sons. They also had a very beautiful garden. The king liked this garden so much that he was tending to it himself. At the bottom of the garden an apple tree had grown which was entirely made of gold. The king was overcome with happiness that in his garden there was an apple tree unlike any other tree in the whole wide world. He kept going to it and looking at it from all sides. One day he was delighted to see the tree budding, going into bloom, the flowers falling, and the fruit starting to show. Then towards the evening the fruit started ripening. The king was smiling from ear to ear. He was salivating at the thought that the next day he would be able to have at his table golden apples, something hitherto unheard of. Early the next morning the king went into the garden to pick some golden apples and find out how they tasted, but the tree did not have any ripe fruit hanging from it. It was as if the fruit had started to show the previous day had vanished without trace. But while the king was standing there, staring at the tree that had given him so much hope the previous day, he saw some buds appearing and going into bloom. Then he saw the flowers fall and the fruit starting to show again, and the promise of another opportunity to sample the golden apples. The king recovered from his disappointment and was happy to wait until the next day. However, the next day, once again, the tree was devoid of apples. The king was extremely cross and ordered his guards to catch the thieves, but night after night the guards failed to do so. The tree was going into bloom every day, the flowers would fall off, the fruit would grow, and by the evening the apples would start to ripen. Who was coming at night and taking the apples without the king's people finding out? It looked like whoever it was, they were going to do it, despite the king and his guards. The king was so upset by this that he was willing to relinquish his throne and leave it to whomever would be able to catch the thief. The king's eldest son came before him and asked for permission to guard the tree. The king greeted his eldest son's request with great enthusiasm, and the young man set to work. He kept watch that night, but the same thing happened as the guards who kept watch before him. He fell asleep, and by the morning the fruit were all gone once again. The following night the middle son kept watch. He had no more success than his elder brother, and returned to his father not having accomplished anything. They both said that they had succeeded in staying awake until midnight, but afterwards they could not keep their eyes open any more and fell into a deep sleep, unaware of anything that was going on around them. The youngest son was listening and kept quiet. Then, after his brother finished telling the father what had happened, he asked for his father to let him keep watch as well. As sad as the king was that neither of his 2 older sons had been able to catch the capital thief, he laughed when he heard his youngest son's request, but after many pleas he allowed him to stand guard for one night. As soon as evening came, the youngest son took his quiver of arrows, his bow, his sword, and went into the garden. He found himself a solitary spot, far removed from any of the trees and fences, so he wouldn't have anything to lean on. Instead, he decided to remain standing on the stump of a cut-down tree. That way, when a sleep would come upon him, and he would start getting drowsy, he would fall down and wake up. Indeed, after falling down a couple of times, his sleepiness went away, and he remained awake and unplagued by the temptation of sleep. Towards daybreak, when the sleep was sweetest, he heard a rustling. It seemed to be coming from a flock of birds that was flying towards the tree. As he kept listening, he soon heard someone plundering the apple tree. He took out an arrow from his quiver, put it against his bow, and released it in the general direction where the rustling was coming from. There was no movement. He released another arrow, and once again nothing. When he released the third, the rustling could be heard again, and he understood that the flock of birds must have flown away. He approached the apple tree and saw that the thieves hadn't had time to take all the apples. They had taken some, but there were still apples left hanging from the tree. When he was examining the area, he saw something shiny on the ground. He bent down and picked up the shiny object and saw that it was a feather made entirely of gold. He picked a few apples and put them on a golden platter, and with the feather in his cap he went before his father. The king was ecstatic when he saw the apples. He started spreading the news throughout his entire kingdom that his youngest son had succeeded in bringing him golden apples and finding out that the thief was a bird. The boy asked his father for permission to go after the thief, but the king was no longer interested in pursuing that mission. He was satisfied with having been able to see and taste the golden apples. However, the boy did not leave it at that, and eventually persuaded his father to allow him to go on a quest to catch the thief. To prepare for the road, he took clothes to wear, money to spend, and asked his most loyal servant to accompany him. Then, when the quiver of arrows on his back and a sword hanging from his left thigh, the king's youngest son and his servant set off on their quest. They went and kept going until they reached the desert. There they had some rest and decided to go towards the east. Still traveling for a good while, they reached a big forest that was thick and rich. While making their way through the undergrowth, they saw in the distance a big wolf with a copper forehead and prepared themselves for a defense. The boy took an arrow out of his quiver, ready to strike. "Wait, Prince Charming," the wolf shouted. "Don't release your arrow. I will do much good to you one day." The boy listened to the wolf and did not release his arrow. The wolf asked the boy where he was going and what he was hoping to find in these woods untouched by human foot. The boy told him about the apples in his father's garden and that he was on his way to catch the thief. The wolf said the apples had been stolen by the king of the birds. This bird had gathered the most agile companions to be part of his flock, and they had flown together to steal the apples. The wolf also told the boy that this bird belonged to a king whose kingdom was located at the edge of the forest and showed him the easiest way to reach that kingdom. Then, giving him a small, pretty apple, the wolf said, "When you will need my help, look at this apple, think of me, and I will immediately appear by your side." The boy took the apple and put it close to his chest. Then, saying goodbye, he took off, accompanied by his faithful servant. They went through the thick of the forest and reached the kingdom the wolf had directed them towards. They started to speak to inhabitants of that kingdom and were told that the king was keeping the bird in a golden cage in his garden. That is all they needed to know. They circled the royal courtyard a few times and noted all the details that seemed relevant. As evening fell, they hid close to the wall surrounding the courtyard and waited until everybody had gone to sleep. Then the servant kept watch as the boy climbed onto the edge of the wall and jumped into the courtyard. He soon located the bird, but when he grabbed the cage, the bird gave out an ear-splitting shriek. The boy immediately found himself surrounded by a multitude of birds, some big, some small, all shrieking in their own language. They made such noise that the king's servants woke up. When they went into the garden to investigate, they found the boy holding the cage and defending himself while the birds were trying to tear him to pieces. The servants grabbed the boy and brought him before the king, who had also woken up and wanted to know what was happening. As soon as the king saw the boy, he knew who he was. "I am sorry, Prince Charming, that this has happened," the king said. "If you had come to me in good faith to ask for the bird, I might have been persuaded to give it to you willingly, but now as you have been caught red-handed, you have to be put to death, as is our custom, and your name will be sullied with the label of thief. This bird, enlightened king," the boy said, "has plundered us repeatedly of the golden apples that my father has in his garden. This is why I have come to catch the thief. There might be truth in what you say, Prince Charming, but I cannot go against our customs. Only a significant deed of bravery done for the benefit of our kingdom can rescue you from the death penalty. Tell me what task to accomplish, and I will take it on. If you will bring me the white mare which is at the court of the neighboring king, you will escape unpunished, and I will give you the bird." The boy took on the task, and he left that same day with his servant. When they reached the court of the neighboring king, they spent some time finding out about the mare in the royal court. Then, as evening came, the boys found a spot close to the wall surrounding the palace courtyard. From there could observe what was going on inside the yard. They watched as two servants took the mare for a walk, and marveled at her beauty. She had a golden bridle, decorated with precious stones that shone brighter than the sun. Towards midnight, when the sleep was at its sweetest, the boy told his servant to keep watch while he climbed onto the wall and jumped into the king's courtyard. He went on to the tips of his toes until he reached the stables. There he opened the door, grabbed the bridle, and pulled the mare towards him. Everything was going smoothly until the mare reached the doors of the stables and neighed so loudly that the sky started screaming. Her neighing was heard throughout the entire royal palace and woke up the king's servants, who immediately rushed to the stables to find out what was happening. They grabbed the boy and took him before the king, who had also woken up. As soon as the king saw the boy, he knew who he was, and confronted him about the cowardly deed he was about to commit. As the previous king had done, he told the boy that the custom of his country was to put thieves to death, and he did not have the power to overturn these customs. The boy told him the entire story of the apples, the bird, and what the neighboring king asked him to do. Then the king said, "If you bring me the fair maiden, you will escape death, and your name will remain untarnished." The boy took on the challenge and set off, accompanied by his servant. On the way, he remembered the little apple the wolf had given him. He took it out, looked at it, and thought of the wolf, who immediately appeared before him. "What is your wish, Prince Charming?" the wolf asked. The boy told him everything that had happened and asked the wolf how to accomplish the latest task. "It's an easy one," the wolf said. "Leave things to me. It's as good as done." And the three of them set off towards the fair maiden. When they got close to the fair maiden's dwelling, they took a rest in a forest from which the maiden's bright palace could be seen. And how beautiful the fair maiden's palace was! Even the wolf marveled at its order and symmetry. The next morning they agreed that the boy and his servant would wait for the wolf by the trunk of an old tree. As soon as the wolf arrived at the fair maiden's palace, he found a way to sneak into the garden. He knows that the leaves of the trees had fallen off, so they were entirely bare, even though it wasn't winter. On the ground, the fallen leaves were dry and brittle. Only the one rose bush still had its leaves and was full of buds, some in bloom and others open. In order to reach it, the wolf had to walk on the tips of his toes so as not to rustle the dry leaves, and hid in that flowery bush. While the wolf waited and kept watch, the fair maiden came out of her palace accompanied by 24 servants, and she started to walk through the garden. When the wolf saw her, he was so astounded by her beauty that he was on the point of inadvertently revealing himself, but he managed to regain his control in time. Her hair was entirely golden, arranged in braids that were long and thick. When she was looking at someone with her big black eyes, she could make that person sick with longing. Her eyebrows were well arched, as if they had been painted on, and her skin was whiter than milk foam. After walking through the garden a few times, followed by her servants, she went to the rose bush to pick a few flowers. The wolf jumped out of the rose bush, took her in his arms, ran towards the spot where the boy was waiting while her servants dispersed in fright. The fair maiden fainted from the shock, so the wolf placed her into the boy's arms. The boy was mesmerized by her beauty and fell in love with her straight away. When the fair maiden woke up, she took one look at him and fell in love with him as well. They decided that they did not want to part from one another, and told each other their life story. "Leave it to me," the wolf said. Then he saw the love had blossomed between them. "I can make things turn out as you wish." On their way to the king, who had asked the boy to bring him the fair maiden, the wolf made 3 somersaults and transformed into the exact likeness of the fair maiden. They agreed that the boy's servant would stay with the fair maiden by the root of a big tree in the forest until the boy returns with the white mare. When he reached the king's court, the boy handed over the wolf, disguised as the fair maiden. As soon as the king saw her, his heart melted and untold longing took hold of him. The king said, "Your bravery, Prince Charming, has rescued from death and bad reputation. Now I will reward you for it by giving you the mare." As soon as the boy took hold of the mare's bridle, he went on his way. The real fair maiden climbed on the mare. They rode over the borders of his kingdom. Meanwhile, the king gathered his advisers and went to the church to marry the fair maiden. When he reached the door of the church, the wolf did 3 somersaults, turned back into a wolf, and fleshed his fangs at the king's guards. When they saw the wolf and his enormous fangs, the guards froze in fear. Then, after they found their bearings, they tried to chase after the wolf with boos and shouts, but the wolf fastened his pace until he could no longer be seen in the distance. By using shortcuts, he soon caught up with the boy and accompanied him on his way to the king, who had asked for the mare. When they got close to the royal palace, they did as they had with the previous king. The wolf transformed into a white mare. The boy handed him over. The king was overjoyed to see the mare. After he welcomed the boy with great honor, the king said, "Well done, Prince Charming. You have escaped both death as well as a bad reputation. I will hold my royal promise and will always be grateful to you." He handed over the bird to the boy, who took the bird cage in which the bird was kept and said his goodbyes and left. He reached the forest where the fair maiden, the mare, and the servant were waiting. They set off together to his father's kingdom. The king, who had received the mare, ordered his entire army and his most high-ranking aristocrats to come out into the field. He wanted to show them how well he could ride that most famous mare. When soldiers saw him, they all shouted, "Live long, king, for having acquired such a treasure. May your name, which you are riding so skillfully, live many years." And indeed the mare galloped, with the king on top, as if it were flying, its hoofs barely touching the ground. They started a competition, but no one came anywhere close to catching up with the mare, because she left every other horse behind. Once the wolf, disguised as the mare, had gathered a good distance, he suddenly stopped, threw the king off his back, and made 3 somersaults and transformed back into a wolf. Then he ran and kept running until he reached the boy. When they were about to part, the wolf said to the boy, "This time all your wishes have come true, but for the rest of your life refrain from wishing for things that are beyond your abilities." Then they parted, each going their own way. When the boy and the fair maiden reached the kingdom belonging to the boy's father, people welcomed them, young and old. They greatly rejoiced when they saw the fair maiden, who looked more beautiful than any other woman on earth. As soon as he arrived, the boy ordered the beautiful stable to be made for the mare, and he placed the cage of the bird on the windowsill facing the garden. Then his father started organizing everything for the wedding, and after a few days the boy and the fair maiden got married. The table was spread for all the guests, and the festivities lasted 3 days and 3 nights. After that they lived happily ever after, because the boy had nothing left to wish for. They may still be alive today if they haven't yet died. And I got into a saddle and told you the story thus. Translator's note: The Magic Wolf. One of the aspects I find so enjoyable about the fairy tales in Petre Ispirescu's collection is that many of them have a raw, unpolished quality that provides a rich source of inspiration for creativity. This tale is one such story, with many of the elements barely sketched out, which seems to invite the reader into a collaborative imaginative exercise to fill in the missing pieces. For instance, similarly to King Eliodor, the hero in the story also receives magical help from an animal as a result of a good deed, a common trope in fairy tales, but the magical helper element is not as well developed as in the King Eliodor story, where that element is fully explored. The wolf in this tale could be more richly drawn out and his relationship to the hero explored in more detail, but all this is left to the reader's imagination. There is a farcical feel to the wolf's actions, especially when the wolf reveals his identity to the two kings who have been duped by his shape-shifting abilities. For creative people looking for inspiration, this mixture of humorous and magical elements could become a rich source of raw story seeds. The love story between the hero and the fair maiden is also not explored in any depth, but the small details that are provided, such as the barren courtyard with the only one blooming rosebush, offer a myriad of creative possibilities. At the end of the story, the magic wolf delivers a message that is popular in Romanian literature: do not stretch your luck by wishing for things beyond your abilities. If you would like to read a story that explores this message in more depth, I recommend the novel Moara cu Noroc by Juan Slavici, which has been translated into English as The Lucky Mill. As you have been reading this story, you may have wondered about the use of the title Prince Charming, which appears several times in this story. The original version of this title is Fat Frumos, which is a name often given to the male hero in Romanian fairy tales. A literal translation might be handsome youth or lad handsome. Frumos means handsome, or fat refers to young men. I chose to translate this title as Prince Charming, as this is a well-known way to refer to a male hero in the English language. I would like to ask you for a small favor. Reviews are the best way to spread the word about this book. If you have enjoyed reading this book, it would mean a lot to me if you could leave a review. Even if you only write a sentence or two, it will help. Thank you. Okay, and that was, I'll write the title. Okay. I'm just going to check how long. Oh, okay. I can read the third one later. Um, I have to go now. The third one is Youth Everlasting, another Romanian fairy tales. Thank you for listening. You've listened now to um, two volumes of the Romanian stories. I'll read the third one next. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.